Chapter 364. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. Brother Lu, it just so happens that you can go to the Guild Alliance today to apply to establish a club-like guild. In 2 days, ask Uncle Hu to find someone to build the base of the guild club on the vacant land behind the manor. In a few more days, Lin Yuan gave the Bronze X/Legend wood-weaving house centipede to Hu Quan to contract. At that time, Hu Quan would be promoted to a Class 5 spirit craftsman. Although Hu Quan was already at the level of a Class 5 spirit craftsman. However, having the standard of a Class 5 spirit craftsman and becoming a Class 5 spirit craftsman recognized by the Radiance Federation were completely different. After Hu Quan became a Class 5 spirit craftsman, he would become the Radiance Federation's top lifestyle class spirit chi professional. Naturally, he would come into contact with other 5-star lifestyle class spirit chi professionals. At that time, Hu Quan would invisibly pull in a batch of Class 5 lifestyle class spirit chi professionals for Lin Yuan. He had Hu Quan, a Class 5 spirit craftsman. If Lin Yuan wanted to look for these Class 5 lifestyle class spirit chi professionals to do things in the future, it would be much more convenient. Lu Jia looked at Lin Yuan and said seriously, "Young master, what should we call the guild club we're going to establish?" When Lin Yuan heard how Lu Jia addressed him, he raised his brows slightly. Lu Jia usually called him by his name because of his previous request. However, Lu Jia would still call him young master during critical moments. As for the guild club's name, Lin Yuan had never thought about it. However, since he wanted to establish a guild club and participate in the Guild Alliance's tournament. Therefore, the goal of the clubs and guilds would definitely be to work hard towards the championship. Since they wanted to win the championship, they had to be unafraid of the clouds that cover their eyes, only because they are at the highest level. The highest level of the sky was the dome. The dome of the heavens is considered the highest. Let's call our guild club the Dome of the Heavens. When Lu Jia heard Lin Yuan say the word dome, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was as though she could feel the magnificent waves in Lin Yuan's heart. Just a glimpse of this magnificent scene filled Lu Jia with a sense of heroism. Lu Jia kept repeating in his mind. The top of the sky. The top of the vault of heaven. The dome of heaven. This was a kind of awe-inspiring heroic spirit. After leaving Lin Yuan's room for a long time, Lu Jia still clenched his fists tightly. After Lu Jia left the room, Lin Yuan looked in the mirror and touched the back of his head, feeling a little conflicted. It was a happy thing that he had grown taller. However, he had clearly grown a centimeter taller, but he couldn't see it. He felt a little uncomfortable. As for the diamond-grade protein cocoon chrysalis, the easiest way for him to get it was to spend a massive amount of radiance dollars to buy it on the market. No matter how expensive the things that could be bought on the market were, in a sense, not precious. This was also why he had not thought of using the flower brocade pearls to exchange for the diamond protein silkworm chrysalis. As a diamond rank spiritual material, the diamond rank protein silkworm chrysalises were circulating in the market. This was because the protein cocoon chrysalis was a diamond insect species phase cocoon that was constantly retreating. Furthermore, this diamond insect species Fae could shed the protein cocoon chrysalis at least 5 times a year. For spirit materials that were relatively easy to obtain, exchanging scarce resources for them was an extremely unwise thing to do. Even if he did not care about these losses, he would definitely not do so from the perspective of developing his faction. If he wanted to develop a force, he had to ensure that everything was done in an orderly manner and that all resources should be allocated and integrated in the most reasonable manner. Only in this way could he accumulate a boundless foundation. Lu Jia was now Radiance 100 Sequence number 30, and the Radiance Sacred Hall had announced it. This made many of Lu Jia's fans, who had been following him since he entered the Radiance 100 Sequence, cry. Everyone in the mansion was happy for Lu Jia. Bai Hao and Wang Fan were the happiest. Bai Hao and Wang Fan were Radiance 100 Sequence members and members of the A-Rank Guild Club's main force. Bai Hao and Wang Fan had long known that Lu Jia was going to return to the Radiance 100 Sequence. However, when Bai Hao and Wang Fan were at the Radiance Sacred Hall's venue and witnessed Lu Jia's return to the Radiance 100 Sequence, hot tears gushed out uncontrollably. The tears were the testimony of many years of friendship. Therefore, Biyao and Wang Fan couldn't help smiling for the next few days. However, on the second day of the competition, the Star Web reporters wrote that it was a mocking smile for the opponent. This matter made Biyao and Wang Fan very annoyed. On the day Lu Jia went to the Guild Alliance to apply for the establishment of a guild club, it was completed. This was enough to prove the privileges of the Radiance 100 Sequence members in the Radiance Federation. However, Lu Jia did not choose to let the Guild Alliance directly announce the Dome Guild Club. Instead, he planned to announce it when he participated in this year's Radiance 100 Sequence competition and became a Radiance 100 Sequence member 2 months later. This was because when Lu Jia applied to establish the Dome Guild Club, there was only one word added in the column of the president's name. This word was black. Over the past few days, Lin Yuan had used the blind trade method. He had used 10 flower brocade pearls to exchange for about 170 drops of silver WYRM species phase essence blood. This harvest made Lin Yuan feel very dissatisfied. Although silver WYRM species phase essence blood was rare, it was not very useful. The rarity of silver WYRM species phase made the flower brocade pearls a creation master's favorite. The amount of silver WYRM species Fey blood that could be exchanged was still limited. This time, Lin Yuan could not say that he had suffered a loss, but he definitely did not make a profit. This matter also made Lin Yuan understand that the blind trade method was not suitable for exchanging for particularly unorthodox things. However, these 170 drops of silver WYRM species phase essence blood were more than enough for the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Blackie. At the same time, Lin Yuan had also used the market price to buy 3 diamond protein silkworm chrysalises for Lu Jia in the rare life form pavilion. The platinum/fantasy breed insect queen often needed close to 10 days to consume and absorb a diamond protein silkworm chrysalis. These 3 diamond protein silkworm chrysalises were enough for Lu Jia to use for a month. With the diamond protein silkworm chrysalises, Lin Yuan believed that it would not take 15 days. The source-type cocoon of evolution could be promoted to normal. Over the past few days, Lin Yuan had been frantically enhancing the usnias. He had enhanced a large number of bronze usnias to silver. Lin Yuan was using this method to gradually enhance the spiritual power contained in his body. After returning from the question and answer session with the Moon Empress on Radiant Moon Mountain, Lin Yuan was preparing to put the 3 silver/Legend Mountain Eternal Life carps into the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. He also gave the bronze/Legend wood weaving house centipede, which had split during the evolution, to Hu Quan. Lin Yuan's phone rang. Genius was currently lying in Lin Yuan's arms. Genius kept rolling around in Lin Yuan's arms and acted coquettishly. It still tickled Lin Yuan from time to time and played with him. Lin Yuan was most afraid of tickles, so he had to constantly avoid Genius' mischievous little paws. After Genius evolved into the 1,000 Questions beast, its habit of sleeping had improved a lot. However, it would become very energetic in the afternoon, and its habit of becoming more and more troublesome had not changed at all. When Genius heard Lin Yuan's phone ring, it said, "Lin Yuan, quickly pick up the phone." When Genius saw how Genius was making a fuss in his arms, Lin Yuan could not help but lovingly stroke Genius' soft fur. "If it wasn't for you always making a fuss, would have picked up the phone long ago." Genius was still making a fuss previously, but when Lin Yuan picked up the phone, Genius obediently stayed in Lin Yuan's arms and did not move at all. Genius was still making a fuss previously, but when Lin Yuan picked up the phone, Genius obediently stayed in Lin Yuan's arms and did not move at all. The sensible one was afraid of disturbing Lin Yuan's conversation with others. When Lin Yuan picked up the phone, he heard Listen's voice coming from the other end. "Expert, I have already arrived at the agreed location." Listen was standing at the entrance of the manor, looking a little nervous. Listen knew that today's meeting would determine his and the Listening Deer Chamber of Commerce's future. Lin Yuan patted Genius, who was in his embrace. "Go, smart guy. Go to the manor gate and bring the guest in." Today's first update, end of chapter. Chapter 365. After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Genius replied in a childish voice. Lin Yuan, meow. I'm going now. Lin Yuan reached out his hand and helped Genius comb the fluffy and long fur on its head. He then gently rubbed Genius' head twice and was about to bend down to put Genius down. At that moment, Genius leaped up from Lin Yuan's embrace and jumped to Lin Yuan's neck. It rubbed its fluffy and delicate face against Lin Yuan's cheek. Then, it jumped and gracefully landed on the ground from Lin Yuan's shoulder. As Genius ran, its two long, pure white tails shook elegantly behind it. Its posture was indescribably graceful. Lin Yuan felt the residual warmth on his face and revealed a bright smile. Chimey was still in a deep slumber, and apart from accompanying Lin Yuan, Genius didn't spend much time with him. Genius usually guarded Chimey under the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Among all of Lin Yuan's fays, as Genius had evolved from a housekeeping beast like the 100 Questions beast, it had the highest intelligence. Therefore, among all of Lin Yuan's fays, apart from the bracelet that Morbius usually wore on Lin Yuan's wrist, Genius took good care of the other fays. Even the blue flash purple butterfly, which was not very enthusiastic toward Lin Yuan, would fly around Genius for a while every time Genius entered the spirit lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan had been with Genius and Chimey for so many years, so he naturally knew Genius very well. Genius might be very sensible, but it was still a feline fae. In the end, Genius was also a feline fae. Feline fays had always been arrogant by nature. Just like that gold cat species fae that Xian had contracted. Normally, apart from Xian, it would not even bother with Zhang Xiaobai. It was the same for Genius, but apart from the other feline fae's pride, it was also very sensible. Genius had extremely high intelligence and could clearly see Lin Yuan's interpersonal relationships and preferences. Therefore, Genius would try its best to accept the people or things that Lin Yuan accepted. Just like now in the manor, not to mention Lu Jia, Wen Yu, and Hu Quan. Even the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer, who were also fays, liked to play with Genius when they were free. However, when facing some unrelated people, Genius completely maintained the indifference and elegance of a feline fae. For example, Listen, who was standing at the mansion's entrance. Listen might have high EQ and was good at handling interpersonal relationships. However, the longer he stood at the entrance of the manor, the more nervous Listen became. At this time, the sky was getting dark, but one could still vaguely see things in the distance. Standing at the entrance of the manor, Listen discovered that it was already early winter in the royal capital. However, the interior of the manor in front of him was as green as midsummer, and there was a faint bamboo fragrance wafting from it. As the saying goes, a man cannot live without bamboo. The diffuse bamboo fragrance wafted into Listen's nose. The bamboo fragrance, which should have calmed him down, made Listen even more nervous. At that moment, Listen heard a childish but polite voice ring in his ears. "Welcome to the return from faraway manor. Follow me." Upon hearing this sound, Listen searched for a long time before discovering that it was a pure white cat. At this moment, the pure white cat was squatting in the middle of the entrance of the manor. The pale blue eyes were looking at him with a trace of alienation and sizing him up. Listen hurriedly said, Thank you. You've worked hard." After Listen finished speaking, the white cat stood up and walked in front, leading the way. From time to time, it would look back. Listen kept having the feeling that the white cat was looking back to see if the person behind it had lost track of it. When Listen first saw the white cat, he subconsciously thought that it was a housekeeping beast. However, he immediately dispelled this thought. This was because in this world, there would not be any housekeeping beast as light and elegant as the white cat in front of him. Housekeeping beasts were simply too common. When Listen was young, he also had a top-notch housekeeping beast. Even the top-notch housekeeping beast could not have the vigor in the eyes of the white cat in front of him. Moreover, this white cat had two tails behind it. From far away, Listen saw a large manor in front of him that emitted a soft halo. However, he did not think much about it. The closer he got, the more nervous he became. When he got close to the manor, Listen suddenly discovered a horizontal board above the manor. The words, "Return from far away," were engraved on the horizontal board. What surprised Listen was not the words on the horizontal board, but the material of the horizontal board was actually completely jade-textured old willow wood. Before Listen could have too many thoughts of being surprised, the childish voice rang in his ears again. "We're here." Then, Listen saw the white cat with two tails leap forward. Listen looked up and saw that the white cat had already jumped into the arms of a sunny youth of about 18 or 19 years old. It was intimately rubbing this sunny youth's neck. Listen also recognized this sunny youth in front of him. This youth was the one he had met on Star Web, the one who could casually take out any kind of bronze/epic fae. He was also a god with at least the resources of an advanced class 4 creation master. When Listen looked at Lin Yuan, Lin Yuan also looked up and sized up this young man with phoenix eyes and a beauty mole at the corner of his eye. Lin Yuan found that this young man with phoenix eyes and a beauty mole at the corner of his eye could be seen to be capable and calm. Under the capability and calmness, there was a trace of maturity that did not match his appearance. He had obviously experienced a lot of storms and waves. It was just that Listen's almond-shaped eyes had very heavy dark circles around them, and he had the air of a prostitute. Clearly, Listen had been dealing with the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's mess. After dealing with the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's mess, he immediately rushed over. Lin Yuan replied with a smile. "Come in and take a seat." After saying that, Lin Yuan took the lead and sat on the water rhinoceros leather sofa. Then, he picked up the Three Treasures tea on the table and poured a cup for himself and Listen. However, Listen, who was behind Lin Yuan, had already exposed the mansion's furnishings when Lin Yuan walked inside. Listen was completely dumbfounded at the door. Usually, Listen would think that he was too tired and anxious, so he was in a trance. Or he could guess at the jade-like luster in front of him, which was decorated almost entirely with jade-textured wood. Could it be an imitation made from ordinary jade stones? However, the calming effect of the halo and the unique texture of the wood told listeners that all of this was real. Even though Listen had a very high EQ, he was also stunned for a moment. When Listen came back to his senses, he found that the sunny youth had already sat there and poured 2 cups of steaming tea, looking at him calmly. Baidu, read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Book House for free. Chapter 366. At that moment, Listen felt that his horizons had suddenly changed. Previously, Listen had felt that the arrangement of those rising factions, which used a large number of high-grade plant fays to decorate the rooms, was already extremely luxurious. But now, looking at this mansion in front of him, Listen seemed to truly know what was called unparalleled foundation. Listen resisted his surprise and sat in front of the youth. Before Listen could speak, he heard the sunny youth opposite him say, "It's cold in early winter, and you're not wearing much. It's early winter and you're not wearing much. Drink some hot tea to warm yourself up." Lin Yuan had called Listen over this time because he had already planned to accept the loyalty of Listen and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. However, Lin Yuan still wanted to know what difficulties the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce currently encountered through Listen. Lin Yuan wanted to take over the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and let Listen manage it as a wisp of dust under his cloud layer because the Chamber of Commerce could bring convenience to Lin Yuan. As long as the difficulties encountered by Listen and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce were less than or equal to the convenience brought by the Chamber of Commerce's functions, Lin Yuan was willing to accept the loyalty of Listen and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. If trouble and convenience were equal, it would mean that what Lin Yuan did was useless. Even so, Lin Yuan was willing to bring Listen and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce under his command. This was because Lin Yuan fancied Listen's talent. If Lin Yuan wanted to establish a private faction where everyone was an elite, talented people like Listen were still very necessary. Lin Yuan raised his brows slightly as he took a sip of the Three Treasures tea in the sweet white glazed teacup in his hand. The Three Treasures tea in the cup should be called the Four Treasures tea. When Yu brewed the Three Treasures tea, she had put in a rather rare plum. The addition of the plum made the Three Treasures teas taste richer. The sourness and sweetness in the plum eliminated the fragrance of the oil and the pine nuts. On the contrary, it set off the fragrance of the other two ingredients in the three treasures: tea, plum blossom, and Buddha's hand. When Listen heard Lin Yuan's words, his heart warmed. No matter what, this sunny youth in front of him gave him equality and respect. For so many years, especially after the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's incident, Listen had been troubled by the Class 3 Creation Master's retainers many times. But at this moment, just the mansion that this sunny youth lived in had immeasurable wealth. With such a foundation, when the sunny youth treated him like an old friend. First, he poured a cup of hot tea for himself to wash away the coldness of early winter, as if he was meeting an old friend. This feeling made Listen feel warm and fuzzy. Listen picked up the teacup and took a sip. Listen had rushed all the way and did not care about drinking water at all. He was already thirsty when he stood at the entrance of the manor. Now, with just a small sip, the fragrance of the plum immediately made his mouth water. But then, Listen tasted the tea in his mouth. Although his expression did not change, the more he thought about it, the more shocked he became. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce mainly sold Buddha hand flowers. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had channels for Buddha hand flowers ranging from bronze to gold. Furthermore, it supplied many Class 4 and Class 5 shops on Star Web. This allowed Listen to understand the Buddha's hand flower very well. When Listen first tasted the Buddha's hand flower in the tea, he didn't have any reaction. Immediately after, Listen discovered that the taste of this Buddha's hand flower was very similar to the platinum Buddha's hand flower that he had tasted before. It was just that the taste was much richer. If the platinum Buddha's hand flower was air-dried and sold as a spiritual ingredient, a small piece would cost more than 300,000 radiance dollars. Such a precious thing was actually placed in the teacup as an imperceptible light taste in the tea, just to enrich the taste. Such luxury once again made Listen understand the foundation of this cheerful youth in front of him. It had to be known that having money and not treating money as money were actually two different levels to a certain extent. Lin Yuan saw that Listen had drunk the hot tea and warmed up his body. Tell me about the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yuan went straight to the point and asked the main topic. If it were someone else, they might polish for a long time to give an answer that would be the most beneficial to them. However, Listen did not do so. Instead, he truthfully picked out the key points of all the problems and difficulties he had encountered and introduced them clearly. Listen did not elaborate on the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's advantages. This was because he knew that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's advantages should not be considered much in the eyes of this youth in front of him. Therefore, Listen focused on the difficulties the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had encountered. As Lin Yuan listened to Listen's words, his fingers gently tapped on the completely jade-textured table in front of him, letting out a light sound. After Listen finished his introduction, he was no longer nervous and anxious. Listen had placed everything in front of this youth in front of him. Therefore, how would this youth decide next? Listen knew that he only needed to wait. When Listen had first arrived at the mansion, he had been too nervous and shocked, so he walked a little stiffly. Now that he had relaxed, Listen picked up the tea in the teacup on the table and took a sip. Immediately after, when Listen turned his head, he saw a spectacle that did not belong to the human world. In this purple brilliance, there were butterflies flapping their wings and 5 fortune ranches swimming in the purple brilliance. Listen only felt that his titanium eyes had been pierced directly. The 5 fortune ranchu wasn't too rare. An elite 5 fortune ranches was only 60 to 70 radiance dollars. However, where could he see a large group of bronze/flawless 5 fortune ranches? Listen, who was drinking tea, was startled and started coughing. At that moment, Lin Yuan also finished thinking about it. The trouble the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce encountered now was a rising faction that wanted to take over the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. However, behind this rising faction was the shadow of a veteran faction that did not have a rich foundation. This veteran faction was the faction that had absorbed the Class 4 Creation Master and 3 Class 3 Creation Masters from the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Even if a veteran faction did not have rich trump cards, it would at least have a Class 4 Creation Master. In terms of combat power, if a faction was recognized as a veteran faction by other factions, then, it must have combat power above King Class. However, It could not be said that the faction that targeted the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce must have Emperor-class experts in terms of combat power. The Radiance Federation's positioning of Emperor-class experts was that only S-rank Spirit Chi professionals and Myth Breed Fays could be called Emperor-class experts. However, the definition of combat power above King class was relatively vague. As long as it was a Suzerain/Myth 3 Fey, even if it did not become a Myth Breed, it could be said to have combat power above King class. In terms of combat power, as a Suzerain/Myth 3 Fey, Endless Summer was already at the peak of Emperor-class combat power. Therefore, although Lin Yuan's private faction had fewer people in terms of combat power, however, in terms of peak combat power, it did not lose to other factions. Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 367. Lin Yuan was only taking over the empty shell of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, which was not a big deal. Moreover, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's creation master resources had already been absorbed by the veteran factions. If this veteran faction bit him after he took over the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, he wouldn't be able to survive. Since Lin Yuan had decided to establish his own faction, he would not be able to do so. He did not mind using this veteran faction without any foundation to establish his dominance. This way, they could also intimidate the other veteran forces with a foundation in the future. He wanted those veteran forces with deep foundations to consider whether they were qualified or not when they set their eyes on his private forces. Apart from the clash of combat strength, as long as the opponent didn't have a Class 5 creation master, they would also be able to compete with each other in terms of resources. He was confident that he would have the upper hand. Even if the other party had a Class 5 creation master, if they were to compete in the resources of Bronze/Legend phase, they wouldn't be able to compete. Lin Yuan actually dared to compete with a Class 5 creation master in terms of foundation. After weighing the pros and cons, Lin Yuan decided to accept Listen and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's allegiance. Although the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was only an empty shell, its channels and functions were still there. Under Listen's handling, it could be said that 1,000 things were waiting to be done. Currently, the only trouble they had encountered was a rising force under a veteran force, which was eyeing them covetously and wanting to annex them. Compared to a talent like Listen, Lin Yuan felt that he was not at a disadvantage. Since Lin Yuan was done weighing, he raised the teacup in his hand and extended it forward. When Listen saw Lin Yuan's action, an ecstatic expression appeared on his face. Listen hurriedly picked up the teacup in his hand and knocked it with Lin Yuan's. Then, he excitedly drank the 3 treasures tea in one gulp. Then, Listen half-knelt on the ground with the etiquette of a knight. A silver rune shot out of Listen's mental strength. "I'll listen and swear by the willpower rune." Then, Listen looked at the cheerful youth sitting on the water rhinoceros leather sofa. Lin Yuan did not stop Listen's actions and just said, "Listen to me. I am Lin Yuan." Upon hearing that, Listen replied respectfully with a solemn expression. "I, Listen, swear by the willpower rune to dedicate my life and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to Lin Yuan. I only ask for protection so that I can lead the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce." Listen did not say what would happen if he broke the oath. This was because Listen had dedicated everything he had to Lin Yuan in his oath. As long as Lin Yuan thought about it, he could deprive Listen of his control over the willpower rune. It caused Listen to be rejected by the will of heaven and earth. Although this would not take Listen's life, to some extent, being rejected by the will of heaven and earth was no different from taking his life. Listen had used a willpower rune to make such a heavenly oath, and it could not be said to be light. However, Listen had used the willpower rune to make such an oath not only to express his loyalty but also for himself. Listen had actually been considering whether to pledge loyalty to Lin Yuan during this time. After all, Listen had only seen Lin Yuan once on Star Web, so he did not know much about him. However, after thinking for a while, Listen smiled bitterly and realized that he was not qualified to think at all. Listen knew that even if he and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce attached themselves, it was very likely that they would become dispensable pawns. That was also the best choice out of all the options he currently had. Now that Listen had attached himself, What he had to do next was to maximize his value as much as possible. To prove his ability. This would allow him and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to get more resources. From this moment on, Listen had become Lin Yuan's true servant. These servants and retainer knights were different from guardians. From this moment on, as long as Lin Yuan protected the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, he would be Listen's master. At that moment, Hu Quan pushed open the room's door. He walked out of the room. Hu Quan looked like he had just woken up and was still a little confused when he walked out of the room. According to the usual time, this should be the time when Hu Quan started to become a tool and work. Hu Quan was already in a daze, but when he went downstairs and saw the scene in front of him, he felt that he had not woken up yet. What posture are these two youths downstairs in? It's too strange. Hu Quan did not witness the entire process of Listen swearing with the willpower rune. However, just by looking at this half-kneeling youth with phoenix eyes and a beauty mole at the corner of his eye, he knew. This youth should also be considered a member of Lin Yuan's side. After Listen used the willpower rune to make the oath, Lin Yuan stepped forward and reached out to pull him up from the ground. Lin Yuan did not refuse when Listen used the willpower rune to swear loyalty to him. This was because using a willpower rune to make an oath in this world was indeed a very powerful guarantee. Just like in Lin Yuan's previous life, the relationship between people always had to be on guard against each other in the face of absolute interests. If one party unilaterally tore up an agreement regardless of the consequences. In that case, this agreement was no different from a piece of scrap paper. However, in this life, using the willpower rune to make an oath was equivalent to turning an agreement into an irrevocable oath. If the party who swore with the willpower rune tore up the agreement, they would have to pay the price equivalent to their lives. This was a bit like two strangers getting married before falling in love. Lin Yuan was embarrassed at the thought of this. What kind of strange analogy was this? After Listen used the willpower rune to make an oath, Lin Yuan could indeed use Listen with ease and pour resources into Listen and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. He could let Listen display his talents and develop the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. At the same time, Listen's development of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce could also bring more benefits to Lin Yuan. This was considered a win-win situation for both Lin Yuan and Listen. After Listen used the willpower rune to make an oath, he directly became one of Lin Yuan's trusted people. Lin Yuan saw Hu Quan walking over and said, "Uncle Hu, it's better to be busy during the day and sleep at night. Uncle Hu, you should be busy during the day and sleep at night in the future. Staying up late hurts the liver." In Lin Yuan's opinion, even if Hu Quan was a liver emperor, he would not be able to take it in the long run. After all, even Zhang Xiaobai knew to soak wolfberries in a thermos cup for health. Hu Quan hurriedly waved his hand and said, "The dead of the night is more compatible with craftsmanship." When Listen heard Hu Quan's words, the way he looked at Hu Quan changed slightly. When Listen heard Hu Quan's words, the way he looked at Hu Quan changed slightly. In Listen's heart, he had already given Hu Quan, this uncle with a sloppy beard, a colored label. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth twitched slightly. He could not force Hu Quan not to sleep at night, so he would let Lu Jia give Hu Quan some food supplements. Lin Yuan was originally prepared to give Hu Quan the bronze/legend wood weaving house centipede that he had evolved before. Now that Hu Quan walked over, Lin Yuan said, "Today's first update, a new main storyline has been brewing for a long time. Today's first update, a new main storyline has been brewing for a long time. Tickets requested. Welcome to the book club and drive enthusiastically." End of this chapter. Chapter 368. Uncle Hu, have you reported to the Spirit Craftsman Association? While speaking, Lin Yuan took a hibiscus cake that Wen Yu had baked from the table. He tore the hibiscus cake into small pieces and fed it to Genius, who was nestled in his arms. Genius was quite fond of these soft desserts. However, when it came to the taste, Genius' taste was the same as Lin Yuan's. They both loved to eat meat, especially pork. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan laughed out loud. Originally, Hu Quan was still a little sleepy, but now he was immediately awake. "Ha ha ha. I've already reported it." After some time, those old fellows from the Spirit Craftsman Association will come back and hold a ceremony for me. Hu Quan was very excited when he said this. This made the face of a sturdy uncle with a scruffy beard smile like a fragrant chrysanthemum. Hu Quan now had the mentality of a winner in life. Hu Quan was only short of a high-quality bronze fei to become a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman. What else could be more comforting than realizing one's ultimate goal in middle age? Lin Yuan looked at Hu Quan's excited expression and said, "That's right. Uncle Hu, looks like you'll have to make a trip to the Spirit Craftsman Chamber of Commerce tomorrow." Hu Quan was a little confused by Lin Yuan's words and did not understand what he meant at all. Just as Hu Quan was about to ask, he heard Lin Yuan speak again. "I've got the wood weaving house centipede that Uncle Hu told you about before." When Hu Quan heard that, his face was full of surprise, and his eyes lit up. His entire body was filled with anticipation. When Listen saw Hu Quan's expression, he knew that the wood weaving house centipede would not be of low quality. Listen, who was listening to the conversation between Lin Yuan and Hu Quan, heard the Spirit Craftsman Association's ritual. He knew that this uncle with a sloppy beard was a Spirit Craftsman Grandmaster who was about to become a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman. For a Spirit Craftsman Grandmaster to look forward to the wood weaving house centipede, it had to be at least a bronze/flawless wood weaving house centipede. Listen thought of Lin Yuan's means again and thought, it's the wood weaving house centipede that made this uncle with a sloppy beard look forward to it so much. Could it be an epic wood weaving house centipede? He waved his hand and summoned the bronze/legend wood weaving house centipede from the Spirit Lock spatial zone. A 30-centimeter long, dark green insect species fei appeared on the completely jade-textured table. The wood weaving house centipede that Lin Yuan had chosen was very lively and active. Therefore, when it was summoned, it started to hide with Lin Yuan and the others on the completely jade-textured table. He held the bronze X/legend wood weaving house centipede in his hand. Otherwise, he would really be afraid that this little thing would take a bite of the completely jade-textured table. Listen only saw this 30-centimeter long, dark green insect species fei for a moment, and his eyes were completely attracted to it. Listen's mind was filled with the thought that Lin Yuan had actually taken out a bronze/legend fei. Listen didn't expect that he would be lucky enough to see something that only existed in legends. It was something that would only appear when a pinnacle Class 4 creation master was overflowing with luck. It was just that this kind of situation was too rare. In a sense, this bronze/legend fei was equivalent to a Class 5 creation master's privilege. A bronze/legend fei was something that even pinnacle king-class experts could only dream of. Now, Lin Yuan had casually summoned it. This made Listen understand that he had completely underestimated the foundation of this sunny youth in front of him. At that moment, Hu Quan suddenly exclaimed, "Ah!" His voice was full of obsession and surprise. "Oh my God! This bronze/legend wood weaving house centipede's silk sac actually split." Lin Yuan nodded and said, "That's right. Uncle Hu's luck is really good." Hu Quan's originally ecstatic grin stretched all the way to his ears. However, after hearing Lin Yuan's words, the corners of his mouth that reached his ears could not help but twitch, and Hu Quan's jaw almost turned over. If this wood weaving house centipede had not been given to him by Lin Yuan, Hu Quan would have asked Lin Yuan righteously if this was something a human would say. "Don't you know if my luck is good or if you gave it to me well?" In fact, in addition to Hu Quan's surging emotions because of happiness, Listen's emotions were also surging. Listen had always felt that he was very lucky to be able to rely on a big tree. However, he now found that his back was not leaning on a big tree at all, but a deep forest with no visible borders. Listen was a smart and relatively deep person. He had always had a clear understanding of himself and knew where his talent was. Listen had always thought that he was good at communicating with others. However, such a talent could only be displayed to the fullest with strong support from the rear. The stronger the support from the rear, the better Listen's ability to deal with the outside world could be displayed. Now, he had a backer who could take out a bronze/legend fei. Listen felt that he could finally put his talents to good use. Hu Quan took the bronze/legend wood weaving house centipede from Lin Yuan and carefully observed its split silk sac. After looking at it for a long time, Hu Quan carefully stored the bronze/legend wood-weaving house centipede's silk sack into his diamond Fei storage box. Then he laughed and said to Lin Yuan, "I can't thank you enough. Lin Yuan, I'll go contract this wood-weaving house centipede in a while. After I become a Class 5 spirit craftsman, no matter what you want me to do, just say the word. My liver is good," Lin Yuan said with a smile. "Okay, I really have a lot of things to trouble Uncle Hu at that time." Listen had been listening to Lin Yuan and Hu Quan's conversation. Observing people's words and body language was his most basic instinct. Listen had always thought that the person Lin Yuan called Uncle Hu was Lin Yuan's elder, but he did not expect him to have a similar status to him. Even if his status was higher than his, there was not much difference in nature. This discovery made Listen think of the bronze/legend wood-weaving house centipede that Lin Yuan had casually given out. This made Listen have to reevaluate Lin Yuan's foundation for the third time since he entered the house. Although Listen thought a lot, he also wanted to understand a little more about Lin Yuan. After all, he would have to live under Lin Yuan's hands for the rest of his life. Hu Quan was going to return to his room to contract the bronze/legend wood-weaving house centipede. Then, he would let it fuse with the willpower rune he had comprehended into a fantasy breed Fey. Hu Quan suddenly thought of something and said, "Lin Yuan, do you not have a flying mount ready yet? Lin Yuan, do you still not have a flying mount ready?" Baidu read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 369. It had been some time since Hu Quan arrived at the mansion. However, during this time, he found that Lin Yuan mostly used his cell phone to book flying Feis. It seemed that Lin Yuan did not have a flying Fei yet. After hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan touched the back of his head and said, "Uncle Hu, I really don't have a flying Fei ready to go out." After hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan touched the back of his head and said, "Uncle Hu, I really don't have a flying Fei ready to go out." The little gray fellow in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone was a crane species Fei. Even though most crane species Feis were good at flying, not all of them could fly. For example, the crane species ostrich Feis were not good at flying. They could only fly a few dozen meters away when flapping their wings. However, their movements were abnormally fast and had extraordinary strength. Their claws could easily grab and pierce through metal spiritual materials that were higher than their own grade. That little gray fellow's genetic model had yet to fully appear. Lin Yuan could not be sure if this little gray fellow was good at flying. At that time, Lin Yuan had decided to raise this gray little fellow, but he had not decided to use it as a flying mount. When Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan's words, his eyes immediately lit up. "Lin Yuan, when I contract the bronze/legend wood-weaving house centipede and let it become a fantasy breed, I'm confident I can build a Fey carriage made mainly of jade-textured wood." When Hu Quan said this, he rubbed his hands and chuckled. He obviously wanted to use the completely jade-textured wood to make a big item. When Hu Quan saw Lin Yuan's thoughtful expression, he continued to speak. "With the fantasy breed wood-weaving house centipede split spinnerets, I can use jade-textured wood to create all kinds of precise machinery. Mixed with some high-grade metals, the Fey carriage can have very strong defense, and the interior can be very comfortable." Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan nodded in agreement. Lin Yuan felt that Hu Quan's suggestion was very good. As long as Lin Yuan was not in a hurry, he did not want to experience the feeling of sitting on the divine travel black swallow's buttocks. After sitting for a long time, it felt like 30 wet nurse Rome were poking your buttocks with needles. It was too painful. The Fey carriage did not refer to the kind of carriage that could be driven by itself before the spirit chi awakening. Instead, it had to be pulled by a Fey in front, a bit similar to the carriage in Lin Yuan's previous life. However, the Fey carriage's carriage was much bigger than the carriages. Fey carriages could travel on land, water, and air depending on the Fey pulling them. However, most of the Fey carriages would choose flying-type Feys with defensive abilities to pull the carriages. A Fey carriage would generally have more than 3 flying-type Feys pulling it. If every flying-type Fey pulling the Fey carriage had a defensive ability, then apart from the carriage's own defensive ability, it would be able to protect the carriage. These flying fays that were pulling the carriage could also effectively protect the carriage. Even if fey carriages had thousands of benefits, most spirit chi professionals wouldn't choose to forge one. After all, the resources required to create a fey carriage were just too much. Building a fey carriage was far less cost-effective than nurturing a flying fey for transportation. Therefore, fey carriages were something that only veteran factions with deep foundations would consider building. It was undeniable that the fey carriage wasn't just sturdy, but it also had great defensive capabilities. Furthermore, the interior of the carriage could be decorated to be exceptionally comfortable. Hu Quan had put forward such an opinion because he felt that Lin Yuan's foundation was enough to build a high-end fey carriage. After all, Lin Yuan's foundation could obtain a bronze/legend wood-weaving house centipede in just 10 days. With such ability, it would be easy to build a high-end fey carriage. Hu Quan's proposal to build a fey carriage was actually to repay Lin Yuan. Creating a high-end fey carriage was not a small project. Even if Hu Quan, a Class 5 spirit craftsman, kept working like this, it would take at least more than 2 months to be able to use the craftsman's spirit to carve a fey carriage. He wanted to find a Class 5 spirit craftsman to spend 2 months to build a fey carriage. This was not something that could be done with money. Even a veteran faction would have to promise enough benefits, and they would also have to pay a favor. They even had to help a Class 5 spirit craftsman find some precious materials as a reward to be able to invite a Class 5 spirit craftsman. A new batch of completely jade-textured wood in Lin Yuan's spirit lock spatial zone was about to mature. He could obtain 20 wooden planks of completely jade-textured wood in one go. These 20 wooden planks of completely jade-textured wood were more than enough to make the main bottom of a fey carriage. If Lin Yuan wanted to build a fey carriage, what he lacked was not the materials to build the fey carriage. What he lacked was the flying fey that pulled the carriage. Lin Yuan had always been different from ordinary creation masters. He could easily enhance bronze/epic fays and even bronze/legend fays. However, he had no way of dealing with high-grade fays. Given Lin Yuan's current standard as a C-rank spirit chi professional, he could only enhance a gold fey at most. Even if he used Morbius spirit chi condensation to condense crystals, at most, he could raise the fey's grade to platinum. However, as long as Lin Yuan was not crazy, he would never use spirit chi crystals to enhance the flying fey that pulled the fey carriage. Although he could condense one spirit chi crystal every 7 days or so, it was still a scarce resource for him. Lin Yuan still had to use the spirit chi crystals to increase his fey's strength. Secondly, even if he didn't need to increase his fey's strength, he wouldn't be able to do so. In that case, wouldn't it be better to use the spirit power crystals to enhance bronze/legend fays? Just as Lin Yuan was about to speak, clear laughter suddenly echoed from the mansion's entrance. When Lin Yuan heard this clear laughter, his eyes lit up because he already knew who it was. Lin Yuan said to Hu Quan, "Uncle Hu, put aside the fey carriage first. I don't have any flying fays that are suitable to pull the fey carriage yet." Then, he turned and walked toward the door. Sure enough, when he turned around, he saw the mansion's entrance. A man who wore a silver robe almost all year round stood there. This man was Xian Yu. Lin Yuan said hurriedly, "Uncle Xian, why didn't you inform me that you were coming so late? I would have gone to the entrance of the manor to pick you up." Xian Yu looked at Lin Yuan with a clear smile and said, "It's not early winter. If I told you in advance that I was coming, you would have to go to the manor to pick me up. You would have to stand in the cold wind for nothing. Why don't I come in directly and bring you the things your master brought for you?" Xian Yu had heard the conversation between Hu Quan and Lin Yuan when he entered the mansion. When he heard that Lin Yuan did not have any flying fays that were suitable to pull the fey carriage, Xian Yu secretly remembered Lin Yuan's words. Mystic Moon secretly remembered Lin Yuan's words and planned to tell the Moon Empress after returning to the Radiant Moon Palace. He thought about how the Moon Empress was always in a daze in the Radiant Moon Palace's inner palace. He was thinking about what gift he should give his disciple but could not think of anything suitable. Wasn't this a good opportunity now? Make up for yesterday's third update, end of this chapter. Chapter 370. This wasn't the first time Mystic Moon had visited Lin Yuan's residence. Even though Xian Yu wouldn't come here every few days, Xian Yu was a little worried. However, he would always come here once every half a month, so he was already very familiar with the place. However, Hu Quan had been sleeping during the day and working hard at night. In the past, Xian Yu would usually come over in the morning. Therefore, this was the first time Hu Quan had seen Mystic Moon with his own eyes. The two moon envoys of the Radiant Moon Palace were famous throughout the world. Emissary Zhang was in charge of external affairs, while Emissary Xianyue was in charge of internal affairs. That was why Mount Huayue's Zhang emissary's reputation was well known. But regarding the Black Moon envoys, those without strength and status knew very little. Only the Radiance Federation's top factions were qualified to know a thing or two. Therefore, Hu Quan did not recognize Xian Yu. However, when Hu Quan saw the silver robe, he seemed to vaguely recall a rumor. It was just that Hu Quan couldn't recall this rumor at the moment. On the other hand, Listen could tell that Mystic Moon and Lin Yuan had a close relationship. Lin Yuan had previously addressed Hu Quan as uncle Hu mainly because of Hu Quan's age, and it was a polite form of address. Now that Lin Yuan was addressing this silver-robed man as Uncle Mystic, even if they weren't related by blood, he was still an uncle on the level of family. Otherwise, this silver-robed man wouldn't have given Lin Yuan something on behalf of his master. Lin Yuan quickly picked up the teacup from the table and poured a cup of 3 treasures tea for Mystic Moon. Uncle Xian, have a cup of tea first. Mystic Moon took the teacup that Lin Yuan handed over and took a sniff before speaking in a clear voice. Little Yuan, there are plums in this 3 treasures tea. It smells good. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan chuckled and said, that's right. This was brewed by Wen Yu. She added the plums that Uncle Xian sent over last time. Xian Yu said as soon as she heard that Wen Yu was the one who made it. When you went out to train, Wen Yu and Kai Cha learned the way of tea for a few days. I heard from Kai Cha that Wen Yu learned it pretty well. Xian Yu's words were filled with praise for Wen Yu. Clearly, she thought very highly of Wen Yu. As the moon envoy of the Leaning Moon Mountain's Radiant Moon Palace, Mystic Moon was the Moon Empress envoy. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the Radiant Moon Palace's chief steward. Wen Yu was just a small spirit attendant in the Radiant Moon Palace, so it was impossible for Xian Yu to take notice of her. Ever since Lin Yuan had chosen Wen Yu as his assistant, she had finally appeared in Mystic Moon's line of sight. Xian Yu also came into contact with Wen Yu. In the beginning, Mystic Moon had advocated for sending 2 spirit attendants to be Lin Yuan's assistants. In the matter of building the manor, Wen Yu had done an excellent job on her own. This allowed Mystic Moon to see Wen Yu's strong ability to handle matters, which dispelled her intention of telling Lin Yuan about her proposal. However, Mystic Moon had truly thought highly of Wen Yu when Lin Yuan had gone out to train. Back then, Wen Yu had gone to the Radiant Moon Palace to look for the Moon Empress to become stronger, and the Moon Empress had given Wen Yu some pointers regarding the Creation Master's abilities. Therefore, he threw Wen Yu to Mystic Moon and asked her to bring her to understand the Radiance Federation's major factions. In the beginning, Mystic Moon only listened to the Moon Empress orders and guided Wen Yu. However, the more Xian Yu guided Wen Yu, the more she discovered that Wen Yu's strategy far exceeded that of an ordinary person. This allowed Mystic Moon to see Wen Yu's true brilliance apart from being a spirit chi professional and a creation master. As the Radiant Moon Palace Master's Moon Envoy, Mystic Moon could not help but sigh at Wen Yu's strong strategy in terms of faction understanding and resource allocation. In the past, when Wen Yu had been a spirit attendant, she had not had the chance to display these talents. Now that Wen Yu was standing in the position of Lin Yuan's assistant, she had the opportunity to display her talents. After Mystic Moon discovered Wen Yu's talent in this area, she had carefully taught Wen Yu for a month. This was why when Wen Yu had returned to the manor to play the Fey Battle Flag game, she had been able to monopolize the 5 factions' resources and make Lin Yuan raise his eyebrows. After Mystic Moon finished the tea in the cup, she placed the teacup on the table. Then, she waved her hand and took out a small square box made of beeswax. Mystic Moon handed the small square box to Lin Yuan and said, "This is a small thing your master made for you." This is a small thing your master made for you. Lin Yuan took the small square box and realized that Mystic Moon had the intention to leave, so he said, Uncle Mystic Moon, sit here for a while. Uncle Xian, sit here for a while. I'll go wash some fruits for you. After saying that, Lin Yuan walked toward the kitchen and did not give Mystic Moon any chance to refuse. When Mystic Moon saw Lin Yuan like this, she could not help but laugh. Usually, Mystic Moon always felt that Lin Yuan was very capable and did not look like an 18 or 19-year-old youth at all. However, Lin Yuan's childish behavior had let Mystic Moon know. Lin Yuan had really treated her as a family member. Of course, when Lin Yuan called him Uncle Mystic Moon outside the Radiant Moon Palace, Mystic Moon felt it in her heart. It was also from that moment on that Mystic Moon treated Lin Yuan as the young lord of the Radiant Moon Palace and her young master. Mystic Moon also treated Lin Yuan as her junior, her nephew. After Lin Yuan went to wash the fruits, only Mystic Moon, Hu Quan, and Listen were left in the huge living room. Mystic Moon glanced at Hu Quan and Listen and said, Let's sit together for a while. Hu Quan and Listen were a little reserved when they saw Mystic Moon. It was not just because Mystic Moon was Lin Yuan's uncle. It was also because of Mystic Moon's clear and noble bearing. This kind of bearing was simply too transcendent. It was simply not something that ordinary people could have. When Mystic Moon heard Hu Quan and Lin Yuan's conversation, he heard Hu Quan say that he was a Class 5 spirit craftsman. Therefore, when he looked at Hu Quan, he could not help but think highly of him. When Mystic Moon heard Hu Quan say that he wanted to build a fey carriage, he could not help but ask. What kind of materials do you think are suitable for the construction of the fey carriage? Hu Quan was a little surprised. Why would this silver-robed man in front of him ask him such a question? However, since he had been asked, Hu Quan answered truthfully. I think it's best to use completely jade-textured wood for the main body of the fey carriage, paired with some rare metals. After listening to Hu Quan's idea, Mystic Moon nodded with admiration. The combination of completely jade-textured wood and rare metals was indeed very suitable to make a fey carriage. It was not tacky, nor did it look very shabby. It was just a little worse than the coral stones shed from the suzerain gem coral. Then Mystic Moon asked again. Then how many flying fays do you think are suitable to pull the fey carriage? Hu Quan thought for a moment and replied, Actually, 3 flying fays are enough. Actually, 3 flying fays are enough. If the conditions allow it, it would be best to have 5. If the conditions don't allow it, 1 is actually not bad. Hu Quan was still thinking about making a fey carriage. On one hand, Hu Quan wanted to make this fey carriage because he was about to become a Class 5 spirit craftsman. He wanted to make an item that could represent his peak achievement after he became a Class 5 spirit craftsman. On the other hand, Hu Quan also wanted to repay Lin Yuan and contribute more to him. However, these words did not sound the same to Mystic Moon's ears. Mystic Moon almost thought that she had heard wrongly just now. Was this still the Class 5 spirit craftsman who had just said that he wanted to use completely jade-textured wood and rare metals to make a carriage? Mystic Moon really wanted to pry open Hu Quan's head and take a look inside. How poor and shabby had he been in the first half of his life? Only then could a Class 5 spirit craftsman say that a flying fey could pull a fey carriage. If only 1 flying fey was used to pull a fey carriage, what was the point of the fey carriage? Wasn't such a fey carriage just an urn that could not move a few hundred meters in the sky? Today's first chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 371. In Mystic Moon's opinion, Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple. There had to be at least 9 fays used to pull the fey carriage. If Lin Yuan liked more fays, it wouldn't be too much to ask for 12. Using multiple flying fays to pull the carriage might not increase the carriage's flying speed. However, if these flying fays that were pulling the chariot had defensive abilities, they would not be able to escape. The more flying fays there were, the safer the carriage could be. Mystic Moon looked at Hu Quan's expression. She realized that Hu Quan's expression was actually quite serious. Mystic Moon cleared her throat and asked, Then, How many fays do you think are more suitable? Mystic Moon's question piqued Hu Quan's interest. Hu Quan replied without thinking, if you want to show style, then the higher and rarer the fey, the better. If you want to show style, it is naturally better to use the rarer and higher grade fays to pull the chariot. There is no need to be so particular about the species of fays. Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Mystic Moon had no intention of continuing to communicate with Hu Quan. If the fey pulling the carriage wanted to show its foundation, then it had to make the flying fays look uniform when flying. Otherwise, if there were as many flying fays pulling the carriage as there were different kinds of flying fays, wouldn't it be a shameless meeting and a mess? Therefore, it was best to only have one kind of fey pulling the carriage. This could ensure that the same kind of fey had the same flying speed. On the other hand, it could also ensure that there would be no friction between the same kind of high-grade fays during flight. It was impossible for the fey carriage's owner to contract all the fays that were pulling the carriage. Since there were no contracted fays, the owner's control would be much weaker. Weak control, in addition, if there were some natural enemies between the two kinds of fays. If there were friction between the two kinds of fays in the sky, it would not cause any serious consequences even if they had been trained by creation masters. However, it was also very troublesome to appease the fey that had friction. Moreover, as long as a precious fey was pulling the carriage, it could show style. Let's get a high-grade flying turtle fey and a high-grade flying snake fey and put them together. What if you pretend to be a black tortoise in the sky? You're still telling others that I should give your fey carriage 10 points. It was simply too unsophisticated. After hearing Hu Quan's words, Mystic Moon was even more determined to tell the Moon Empress about the lack of suitable flying fays for the fey carriage. At the same time, Mystic Moon was a little worried. If Lin Yuan were to be together with such a Class 5 spirit craftsman, would he be brought down by such a person? This was indeed a question worth pondering. Hu Quan was still immersed in the beautiful thought of building a fey carriage. However, he did not know that Xian Yu had already labeled him as a country bumpkin. In fact, if Hu Quan knew about it, he would definitely cry out in injustice. Hu Quan was just from a grassroots background, yet he dared to say that he would use completely jade-textured wood and rare metals to build the main body of the fey carriage. It was because Hu Quan knew that Lin Yuan had these spiritual ingredients. If it wasn't for the fact that he had broadened his horizons during this period of time with Lin Yuan, he wouldn't have been able to do so. Hu Quan had never dared to think about something like a fey carriage. Hu Quan was not to be blamed. If Hu Quan really became a Class 5 spirit craftsman, after Hu Quan's status and level increased, his horizons naturally increased as well. Mystic Moon turned to look at Listen and chatted with him for a while. Xian Yu keenly discovered that Listen's talent in diplomacy didn't lose to Wen Yu's talent in strategy. In this way, Lin Yuan actually had a helper who could manage both internal and external matters. Just like him and Sang Yu, who were beside the Moon Empress. If Cold Moon and Listen's external talents were likened to support-type spirit chi professionals, thus, Cold Moon's method of support was to kill everything that could threaten her team. Using this kind of hardcore method to support. Listening was equivalent to turning all enemies hostile to his team into his own people. He was using this soft-core method to assist. There were pros and cons to this type of support. However, Listen was still young and had time to grow. After Lin Yuan washed the fruits, he cut them into pieces that were suitable for eating. Then, he placed a fruit platter and placed a few fruit forks on it before bringing it out. After chatting with Mystic Moon for a while, Mystic Moon left. Only Lin Yuan, Listen, and Hu Quan were left in the living room. Lin Yuan said with a serious expression. Listen, your listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is still operating as usual. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen nodded and replied seriously. Young master, I brought 11 source-type items this time. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and I have pledged allegiance to you, so these source-type items are yours, young master. Lin Yuan said with a wave of his hand. I'll still take 6 source-type items according to the previous remuneration. The remaining 5 source-type items will be the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's current resources. Do you want the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to maintain its current state? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen immediately expressed his stance. No, I want the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to develop into a big chamber of commerce. Upon hearing Listen's words, Lin Yuan shook his head. Listen's diplomatic talents were outstanding. However, since Listen had been staying in the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, the layout was still a little too small. Listen needed some guidance to understand that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce could become more than just a large chamber of commerce. Or rather, Listen shouldn't just focus on the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce itself. Since you and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce have submitted to me, I will inject the first resource into the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and provide you with the same goods. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen knew that Lin Yuan had not finished speaking. At the same time, he was curious about what exactly the goods that Lin Yuan was talking about were. At that moment, Lin Yuan turned to look at Hu Quan. Uncle Hu, after you become a Class 5 spirit craftsman, go find a construction team and let them build the guild club's base in the open space behind the manor. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan replied, Don't worry, Lin Yuan. After I become a Class 5 spirit craftsman, as long as I say the word, there will be construction teams rushing to build the guild club's base for us. At that moment, Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan say, Don't worry, Lin Yuan. Uncle Hu, the powder of the completely jade-textured wood that we've collected previously can now be used. As soon as Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan's words, he understood what he meant. Completely jade-textured wood was so rare that only people with some foundation could not afford it at all. Therefore, those ornaments mixed with completely jade-textured wood powder and utensils made of completely jade-textured wood powder as glaze. They became luxuries sought after by those who did not have a deep foundation in the Radiance Federation. Any one of them could be sold for a high price of nearly 10,000 Radiance dollars. In Hu Quan's opinion, the resources that Lin Yuan had said he would inject into the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce should be these objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder. Hu Quan could not help but sigh. In this return from faraway manor, it seemed that everything was different from the outside world. Things that were hard to find in the outside world were treated as garbage in this return from faraway manor and could only gather dust in the warehouse. Listen was a smart person. From the conversation between Lin Yuan and Hu Quan, he knew what resources Lin Yuan was going to inject into him. Yesterday's second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 372. Then, Listen fell into ecstasy. In fact, just this batch of goods alone was enough for the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to expand the Star Web online resources it had previously controlled by more than 5-fold. At the same time, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's offline resources could also make a qualitative leap. This made Listen see the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's bright future. To Listen, he had Lin Yuan as his backing. He did not have to worry about other factions plotting against him and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in the future. It was another matter that Lin Yuan was willing to invest in him and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Listen did not expect that he had just led the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to submit to Lin Yuan. To be able to receive such preferential treatment. Listen had already sworn with the willpower rune to become Lin Yuan's man and could not rebel. However, Listen was really helpless when he swore. But now, Listen had a sense of belonging. At the same time, Listen could not help but sigh inwardly. This feeling of having a big tree to lean on was really fucking awesome. Lin Yuan looked at the expression on Listen's face and smiled. Listen, do you think the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce can only develop into a large chamber of commerce? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen hurriedly replied excitedly. I feel that if objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder are deployed by the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, I'm confident in developing the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce into a rising force. Listen had already started to calculate in his heart how to mix these objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder. This kind of resource, which was in short supply in the market, was a good thing for Listen to make money and consolidate his connections. With such a good thing, he had to use it where it mattered most. At the same time, Listen also knew that Lin Yuan would not give him much of such a good thing. But as long as there was a small number of objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder, they would be able to absorb it. Listen was confident that he could bring the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to a higher level. Upon hearing Listen's words, Lin Yuan shook his head again. Lin Yuan did not expect Listen to still not jump out of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's framework. Apart from the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, how many other assets do you think you can coordinate? Lin Yuan's words were like a heavy hammer that knocked on Listen's heart. This heavy sentence directly broke the chain binding Listen's heart, causing the invisible chain to break inch by inch. It also released the beast in Listen's heart. Two flames of ambition seemed to ignite in Listen's eyes. Listen clenched his fists under the table until they turned white, but he pretended to be calm on the surface. I can coordinate as many as there are. Lin Yuan laughed and said, that's right. All right, since you can coordinate all the assets you have, then first develop the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce into an emerging force for me to see. Lin Yuan had only taken a fancy to Listen's talent and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's function as a chamber of commerce. With the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, he only needed to take the basic supplies he usually needed from it. This would save him a lot of trouble. On the other hand, he no longer needed to go through Star Web for the basic resources he needed for his development. This was because Lin Yuan's faction now had the Chamber of Commerce's functions. In a sense, he had also become a channel for basic supplies. This made it extremely convenient for Lin Yuan's faction's development in the future. However, Lin Yuan had taken a fancy to Listen's talent. In that case, Listen had to be able to bring sufficient benefits to Lin Yuan. Otherwise, his resources would be wasted. If that really happened, it would prove that it was a mistake for Lin Yuan to accept Listen and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's allegiance. The flames of ambition in Listen's eyes burned more and more fiercely. Lin Yuan's words opened up the ambition that had been locked in Listen's heart because of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Now that this ambition was completely released, Lin Yuan could feel the fighting spirit brought by Listen's ambition. Lin Yuan was very approving of Listen's ambition. The more Listen's ambition burned, the better it would be for Lin Yuan. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was just the first dust under Lin Yuan's private faction, Sky City. Since this wisp of dust belonged to Sky City, why should it start absorbing more dust from this wisp of dust? To set off a monstrous dust storm. At that moment, Listen said word by word in an extremely serious tone. Young master, I'll do it within a year. Lin Yuan shook his head and said, a year is too long. A year is too long. I think half a year is enough. After saying that, Lin Yuan ignored Listen, who was obviously a little flustered when he heard his words and looked at Hu Quan. Uncle Hu, if you find someone to do the work of making objects with completely jade-textured wood, how many objects can be produced every day? Hu Quan pondered for a moment and said, if I were to find someone to do it, I think it would be better to make a high-end product. Get a Class 3 spirit craftsman to do it. With your reserves of completely jade-textured wood fragments, you won't be able to finish them. Therefore, if we find 23-star spirit craftsmen, we will be able to make 200 items a day. Lin Yuan naturally would not let Hu Quan use the fragments of completely jade-textured wood to create objects that were mixed with completely jade-textured wood. In that case, it would be overkill for Hu Quan. He could look for a grade 3 spirit craftsman to help solve it. After hearing Hu Quan's words, Listen's previous worry and panic completely disappeared. If there were 200 objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder in a single day, that would be 6,000 pieces in a month. 6,000 objects of various sizes made from completely jade-textured wood powder. Based on the scarcity of the market, it wouldn't be a problem to sell it for 60 million radiance dollars. Half a year was a total of 6 months, which was 360 million radiance dollars. He had taken Lin Yuan's 360 million radiance dollars. If they couldn't develop the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce into a rising force, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce wouldn't be able to do so. Listen felt that he was too useless. Listen calculated carefully. If the resources were used properly, in that case, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would have the capital to attack a rising faction within 3 months. With resources and a lot of radiance dollars, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce could completely take the path of a veteran faction. They would use resources to attract high-ranked spirit chi professionals to work for the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yuan looked at Listen again and asked. "I'll give you half a year, is that enough?" Listen hurriedly said. "Young master, I am confident that I can complete the task you have given me within 4 months." After giving some instructions, Listen left the mansion. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had already moved to the royal capital, and Listen still had many things to do. Hu Quan had already returned to his room to contract the Bronze/Legend Wood-Weaving House Centipede. He had to hurry and fuse the Bronze/Legend Wood-Weaving House Centipede with his willpower rune. Make the Wood-Weaving House Centipede a fantasy breed Fae. The moment the Wood-Weaving House Centipede became a fantasy breed Fae, Hu Quan had transformed into a true Class 5 spirit craftsman. Lin Yuan was the only one left in the hall. Lin Yuan was carrying Genius back to his room. Suddenly, his brows furrowed. He felt that red thorn, which had been in the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box, had eaten some dimensional life form. It had actually undergone a certain degree of mutation. Third update yesterday asking for tickets, end of this chapter. Chapter 373. After Lin Yuan felt red thorn's spiritual feedback, he immediately cast his gaze on the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box in front of his chest. He used his spiritual energy to sense the situation in the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box. He saw red thorn squeaking and digesting the dimensional lifeform's flesh in the phase storage box. The mouth of Relinquish trembled like a furnace as it operated rapidly. At the same time, there was a roar when the dimensional lifeform's flesh melted. The tongue of Relinquish secreted special acids for different dimensional lifeforms' flesh in the mouth of Relinquish. It ensured that the flesh-devouring furnace, the mouth of Relinquish, would never be overloaded. The acid corrosion queen bee lay comfortably on the huge flesh-shaped flower above the mouth of Relinquish. From time to time, it would transport the acid-swallowing larvae it had produced through its gold ability from the hive it had built in the mouth of Relinquish. Then, the acid corrosion queen bee flew up and carried the acid-swallowing larvae into the mouth of Relinquish's open mouth like it was offering a treasure. It was like a servant offering a treasure to the queen. However, the queen received the treasure without any reaction and did not show the slightest response. However, the acid corrosion queen bee was enjoying it and even danced on the mouth of Relinquish's flesh-shaped flower. Lin Yuan could not help but hold his forehead. Ever since the acid corrosion queen bee had lived in the big house, it had been licking red thorn to the point that Lin Yuan could not stand it anymore. Lin Yuan roughly checked red thorn's appearance in the spirit lock spatial zone. He found that there was not much change in red thorn's appearance. Lin Yuan looked at the huge living room of his mansion and summoned red thorn from the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box. The summoned red thorn was like a huge pumpkin-shaped sphere that was demonic, ferocious, and beautiful. However, this huge pumpkin-shaped sphere had dozens of mouths of Relinquish. The tongue of Relinquish stirred in the mouth of Relinquish, helping the mouth of Relinquish digest the remaining food. The 60 awe-inspiring eyes of Relinquish blinked frequently, and a strange luster appeared on the surface every time they blinked. The 12 useless red flowers that grew out of red thorn's digestive cavity were nearly 1 meter in size. They could not be any more beautiful. When Lin Yuan summoned red thorn, he focused his attention on the massive flower that had a diameter of 1 meter. Lin Yuan immediately saw where exactly red thorn's appearance had changed. Previously, the 12 huge red flowers with a diameter of 1 meter were completely useless. The only value of these flowers was to increase red thorn's appearance. At the same time, red thorn could also emit sounds like a musical instrument based on the 12 flowers. But now, in the middle of these 12 large red flowers that were nearly 1 meter in diameter, there were many filamentous membranes growing out of the layers of petals. It looked as if this huge red flower was made up of nearly 100 dark red gills. At that moment, Lin Yuan finally knew why red thorn had suddenly comprehended the ability to breathe underwater. From a plant-type source-type life form that could only grow on land, it became an amphibious source-type life form. The appearance of the 12 huge red flowers that were nearly a meter in diameter was the reason why red thorn could survive underwater. Lin Yuan had already checked the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box's situation. He discovered the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh in the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box. The flesh and blood of the gold water world dimensional lifeforms had all disappeared, coupled with the transformation of red thorn's 12 huge flowers. It was obvious that red thorn had eaten those water world dimensional creatures. It was a mutation that occurred after digesting the flesh and blood of the gold water world dimensional lifeforms. At that moment, Morbius' voice rang out in his mind. Lin Yuan, it's great news that red thorn can mutate and gain the ability to breathe underwater. Lin Yuan nodded as he was also very surprised by red thorn's mutation. Lin Yuan had never had a fae that could fight in the water. Although the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur Blackie was an aquatic fae, it didn't look like an aquatic fae. However, as a support-type aquatic fae that could replenish spiritual power, the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Blackie, did not possess combat ability. However, when red thorn had completely mutated into an amphibious creature, it was extremely dangerous. In that case, red thorn would be able to unleash the same strength underwater as it was on land. By spreading the sea of flowers at the bottom of the water, red thorn could indirectly control a part of the water. This mutation directly increased red thorn's strategic significance by a huge margin. At the same time, he was also secretly shocked by the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. Just like the flesh of the alien insect dimensional lifeforms and abyss dimensional lifeforms that red thorn had previously devoured. One increased the acidity of red thorn's body, while the other increased red thorn's fire resistance and withering characteristics. However, the flesh and blood of the water world dimensional lifeforms directly opened up a new combat field for red thorn. Upon hearing Morbius' words, Lin Yuan replied. It's a pity that the gold water world dimensional lifeform's flesh in the leaf-shaped phase storage box is too little. As he spoke, he used his hand to touch red thorn, whose petals had already turned into gill-shaped flowers. Lin Yuan carefully examined it. Lin Yuan realized that the gill-like petals were only on the outer layer of the huge flower. Many of the petals in the inner layer were still the same as before. It was obvious that red thorn's ability to breathe underwater hadn't been completely mutated. Red thorn still needed to devour more gold water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh. After Lin Yuan summoned red thorn, it immediately weaved the thornless vine into a rattan chair. Red thorn controlled the vines to send the rattan chair under Lin Yuan's butt. He even shook the rattan chair twice, indicating for Lin Yuan to sit down quickly. At the same time, the 12 huge flowers blew at the same time. But this time, Lin Yuan was surprised to find that the sound that red thorn blew with the flowers was actually somewhat similar to his name. Then, Lin Yuan felt red thorn transmit a proud emotion to him. It was like a 7 or 8-year-old little girl who had scored 100 points on a test and was waiting for her father to praise her. Lin Yuan was very happy that red thorn could actually make the sound of his name through this huge flower that had gill-like petals. This meant that red thorn already had the ability to learn languages. With this kind of sign of language learning ability, as long as someone carefully taught it, after a period of time, red thorn would be able to communicate with Lin Yuan directly like genius. Among all of Lin Yuan's fays, Morbius was undoubtedly the most intelligent, followed by genius. Between Chimie and red thorn, Chimie's intelligence should be higher. However, Chimie still couldn't speak yet. This was because Chimie's singing ability was very similar to a parrot's ability to learn to speak. Chimie used the songstress bird's talent to quickly remember a melody and then sing it after memorizing it. However, Lin Yuan believed that as long as Chimie's quality and grade were improved, it wouldn't be long before Chimie could speak directly. As a plant-type source-type life form, red thorn already had such high intelligence when it was at Silver/Fantasy I. Thinking about it, it must be related to Endless Summer's Enlightenment Willpower rune. On the other hand, in Lin Yuan's opinion, it should be related to the way red thorn obtained energy. Red thorn grew by absorbing a huge amount of flesh and blood energy. This huge amount of flesh and blood energy could completely promote the development of red thorn's intelligence. This was somewhat similar to the history of human development. Human civilization only began to develop after humans began to eat meat and changed from herbivores to omnivores. In a sense, eating meat was power. Of course, Lin Yuan added another sentence in his heart. If you eat meat, it's best to eat pork. And it must be Uncle Li's blackback mountain boar meat. Sensing Red Thorn's urgent need for praise, Lin Yuan sat on the chair weaved by Red Thorn's vines and praised Red Thorn generously. Red Thorn is awesome. Red Thorn knows how to call my name so quickly. Red Thorn is the smartest. Treating a fae like Red Thorn, which had the intelligence of a 7-year-old child, was actually no different from treating a 7-year-old human child. Make up for yesterday's first update. End of this chapter. Chapter 374. When Red Thorn was displaying its merits, he had to constantly encourage and affirm it. This was because encouragement would allow Red Thorn to be more motivated when it learned to speak in the future. When Red Thorn heard Lin Yuan's praise, its 12-meter-long flowers happily stretched to a diameter of 1.2 meters. Lin Yuan sensed Red Thorn's happy mood and said, Red Thorn, can you learn how to read from me in the future? If you learn how to read, you will be able to communicate with me like how Genius communicates with me in the future. At this moment, the 12 huge flowers of Red Thorn actually trembled together. It was obvious that Red Thorn was using its own method to express that it accepted Lin Yuan's suggestion and was very interested in it. Lin Yuan praised Red Thorn once again. He still had to affirm Red Thorn's willingness to learn in time. At that moment, Genius jumped from Lin Yuan's arms to one of Red Thorn's large flowers. Red Thorn, I can teach you how to read every day. Red Thorn and Genius had an extremely good relationship. When Red Thorn heard Genius's words, it turned its body and used the large flowers to play with Genius. Morbius said in Lin Yuan's mind, spirit crystals don't work on Red Thorn. Lin Yuan, spirit chi crystals are ineffective against Red Thorn. If we can let Red Thorn grow, we will be able to explore the sea and obtain some rare resources from the sea. Lin Yuan sensed that Red Thorn was now a silver/fantasy breed. I have to test the rhizome produced by Red Thorn to see if it can survive underwater. If it's possible, it's not impossible to develop the current shallow sea. Lin Yuan carried Genius down from the large flower and placed it on the water rhinoceros leather sofa. Genius, wait for me here. When I return, I will bring you upstairs to sleep. Genius meowed and rubbed its small head against Lin Yuan's hand. Lin Yuan rubbed Genius's head and stored Red Thorn in the diamond face storage box. He walked out of the mansion's entrance and walked toward the manor's artificial lake. On the way to the artificial lake, Lin Yuan took out a small piece of completely jade-textured wood from the diamond face storage box. The completely jade-textured wood emitted a gentle light in Lin Yuan's hand. It directly illuminated a 3-meter radius around Lin Yuan. The light of this completely jade-textured wood was very gentle, making people feel very comfortable. The light emitted by the completely jade-textured wood blended with the bright moonlight in the sky. At this moment, the cold moonlight of the early winter also carried a bit of a refreshing taste. The man-made lake in the manor was 5 meters deep. When you had nurtured many decorative aquatic fays in this rather large artificial lake. All kinds of fish were swimming in groups in the artificial lake. He walked to the artificial lake and summoned Red Thorn at the shore of the artificial lake. Then, he asked Red Thorn to enter the water according to his situation. Although Lin Yuan could sense that Red Thorn's mutation had given it the ability to breathe underwater, Lin Yuan couldn't help but feel that Red Thorn's mutation had given it the ability to breathe underwater. However, Red Thorn had not completely mutated. Therefore, Lin Yuan was afraid that Red Thorn would not be able to adapt to this 5-meter deep artificial lake. It was also Red Thorn's first time encountering water. Perhaps because it had eaten the flesh of the water world dimensional lifeforms, Red Thorn wasn't afraid of water. Red Thorn directly jumped into the 5-meter deep artificial lake. Lin Yuan immediately looked nervously at Red Thorn, which had sunk to the bottom of the lake. Immediately after, Lin Yuan discovered that Red Thorn, which had sunk to the bottom of the lake, had its 12 massive flowers fully opened. The gill-shaped petals swayed in the water, making Red Thorn very comfortable in the water. At this moment, Lin Yuan's clothes were completely drenched by the splash of water when Red Thorn jumped into the artificial lake. Lin Yuan simply jumped into the artificial lake and dived to the bottom of the 5-meter-deep artificial lake. Then, he communicated with Red Thorn telepathically. He asked Red Thorn to summon a few ramets. Regardless of whether it was the nibbling vine-like ramets or the small spore-shaped ramets. Red Thorn summoned a few ramets. At the beginning, the nibbling vine-like ramets twisted uncomfortably in the water. After a period of time, Red Thorn channeled energy to the nibbling vine-like ramets. The nibbling vine-like ramets were not as nimble as they were on land. As for the small spore-shaped ramets, they lost the ability to release spores after a while. It was obvious that Red Thorn's underwater breathing ability had not been passed on to the ramets. Although it seemed that Red Thorn could freely survive underwater, the artificial lake was only 5 meters deep. Lin Yuan was still unable to measure the limit of Red Thorn's underwater survival. However, if there was a large amount of gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh for Red Thorn to devour, when Red Thorn's 12 massive flowers and stamens became gill-shaped. At that time, Red Thorn's underwater breathing ability could be said to have completely mutated. Lin Yuan estimated that at that time, regardless of whether Red Thorn was nibbling vine-like ramets or small spore-shaped ramets, it should be able to inherit the underwater breathing ability from Red Thorn. Therefore, the next most important thing was for Lin Yuan to obtain the flesh of gold water world dimensional lifeforms. After Lin Yuan came out of the artificial lake, Red Thorn, who was breathing freely at the bottom of the 5-meter-deep artificial lake, returned to the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. He allowed Red Thorn to continue devouring the dimensional lifeform's flesh and energy to increase its grade and quality. Then, Lin Yuan shook off the water stains on his body and walked into the mansion. It was currently early winter in the royal capital, and the temperature in the middle of the night had already reached below zero. As Lin Yuan's body was emitting heat, his wet clothes didn't freeze when the cold wind of the early winter night blew. However, when the cold wind blew, it quickly took away the heat in Lin Yuan's body. It made Lin Yuan feel cool and refreshing. Fortunately, Lin Yuan had used the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar to wash the impurities in his body and improve his gene template. Therefore, Lin Yuan's resistance was extremely high. In addition, Lin Yuan was already a C-rank spirit qi professional. Illnesses like colds and fevers were already far away from Lin Yuan. After returning to the mansion, Lin Yuan saw that Genius had already fallen asleep on the water rhinoceros skin sofa. Genius was lying on the water rhinoceros skin sofa, and its small head was still looking in the direction of the door. It was obviously waiting for Lin Yuan to return. However, as it waited, Genius fell asleep. Lin Yuan looked at his wet clothes and felt the temperature of his hands. Lin Yuan used his mouth to blow a few breaths and realized that his hands were still cold. Lin Yuan was afraid that his hands were too cold and would wake Genius up when he hugged it. Thus, Lin Yuan returned to his room and took a hot shower. After changing into clean clothes, Lin Yuan went downstairs and gently carried Genius back to his room. After placing Genius on the bed, Lin Yuan carefully covered Genius with a small blanket. Then, Lin Yuan directly entered Star Web. Second update for yesterday, end of chapter. Chapter 375. Lin Yuan logged onto Star Web this time to help Red Thorn buy some gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh. In fact, Lin Yuan could tell from the amount of dimensional lifeforms flesh that his master, the Moon Empress, had placed in the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. The water world dimensional lifeforms flesh was scarce. When Lin Yuan had gotten the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box, he had been very excited. Whether it was the alien insect dimensional rift, the abyss dimensional rift, the swamp dimensional rift, or the underground dimensional rift. In these 4-dimensional rifts that had opened on land, almost every dimensional lifeform's flesh had the same amount. However, if one really wanted to compare, the alien insect dimensional lifeform's flesh was slightly more. However, compared to the flesh of these 4-dimensional rifts that had opened on land, there were only over 300 of them. Among them, there were over 200 gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh and nearly 80 platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh. Among them, there were over 200 gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh and nearly 80 platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh. As for the more than 200 gold water world dimensional creatures flesh, they had been completely digested by red thorn during this period of time. The remaining 80 platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh were still stored in the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. Given red thorn's current grade, it still could not digest the platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh and blood. If it forcefully devoured them, it would not only cause a waste of the platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh and blood energy. At the same time, it would also cause a great burden on red thorn's mouth of relinquish. Therefore, the remaining 80 platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh were something that red thorn could only look at but not eat. Compared to the other 4-dimensional rifts that had opened on land, the water world dimensional rift only opened in the sea. The sea had always been a paradise for marine fays. Even in the coastal waters, human spirit chi professionals were relatively rare. The water world dimensional rifts opened in the sea. The water world dimensional lifeforms that gushed out of the dimensional rifts would soon be hunted by marine fays. Therefore, the probability of human spirit chi professionals finding the water world dimensional rifts in the coastal waters was extremely small. After Lin Yuan logged on Star Web, he first went to his Purchase with No Loss store to take a look. He found that a few new people had joined his Purchase with No Loss store's fan club. It should be the creation master or spirit chi professional that had purchased the flower brocade pearls during the blind trade. Lin Yuan did not care about his Purchase with No Loss store's fan club. This time, Lin Yuan displayed 10 flower brocade pearls in his Purchase with No Loss store again, and he still used the blind trade method to sell them. After the previous blind trade for the silver flood dragon species phase essence blood, he had learned his lesson. This time, Lin Yuan's blind trade was the same as the first time. In exchange for a strange flame. The phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree and chimey absorbed the 130 mid-grade strange flames sealed in the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's leaves. More than half of it had already been absorbed. Lin Yuan could clearly sense a trace of transformation in Chimey's bloodline. He planned to exchange for more strange flames so that Chimey could reach Fantasy 3 before he ran for the Radiance 100 sequence. At that time, the bloodline hidden in Chimey's body would be directly stimulated. Chimey would transform from a Twilight Starbird into a new Fae. He could then take the spirit chi crystals he had accumulated and let Chimey raise its grade. After its grade was raised, the Fantasy 3 exclusive skill, Radiant Body, would be Lin Yuan's most powerful single-target means. Therefore, Lin Yuan was now using the flower brocade pearls as a scythe. He would treat those mid-grade strange flames as leeks. He would use the scythe to cut these leeks one by one. He would collect the scattered leeks in the market into his pocket for the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree and Chimey to use. Lin Yuan's Purchase with No Loss store once again publicly displayed 10 flower brocade pearls. It was equivalent to sending a message to the outside world. The message was, "I have plenty of flower brocade pearls." Lin Yuan had not checked any faction's information before contacting any faction. It was because he wanted to wait for a suitable opportunity. And after this blind trade, the time was obviously ripe. Based on the speed at which Lin Yuan's Purchase with No Loss store was selling the flower brocade pearls, Lin Yuan would soon accumulate a large number of flower brocade pearls. Lin Yuan did not intend to sell the accumulated flower brocade pearls through blind trading. Lin Yuan planned to bundle these flower brocade pearls with 10 flower brocade pearls as a unit, to exchange for resources that were a level higher than the flower brocade pearls with factions and creation masters that urgently needed them. It would be unsuitable for those factions and creation masters to exchange with him. However, if he could obtain a large number of flower brocade pearls in one go, it would save him a lot of time and effort. There would still be plenty of factions and creation masters willing to trade. After dealing with the matters in his Purchase with No Loss store, Jiang Fei had already left. He went to look for the merchant who sold the flesh of dimensional lifeforms and fays that Zhou Jiesun had recommended to him a few months ago. Lin Yuan arrived at the destination. He saw a boorish man sitting in front of the shop with a frown on his face, flipping through the account books. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan greeted him. "Brother Feng, why are you so worried?" When the boorish big brother Feng raised his head and saw Lin Yuan, he felt as though he had a vague impression of this youth. When Lin Yuan saw that the boorish big brother Feng didn't recognize him, he gave a hint. "Brother Feng, big sister Zhou Jessen recommended me." The boorish big brother Feng's eyes flashed with a trace of understanding. He closed the account book and stood up. "I remember now. Isn't it going to be the new year soon? Recently, the phase flesh has been selling well and earning a lot of money. But the dimensional lifeform's flesh is all here and can't be sold at a lower price." Lin Yuan wanted to say a few words of comfort, but just as he was about to say them, he held them back. Lin Yuan really had no way to comfort him. It was going to be the active period of the dimensional rifts that happened once every 10 years. At that time, there would definitely be a large number of dimensional lifeforms' flesh flowing into the market. Therefore, if the dimensional lifeform's flesh in Big Brother Feng's hands could not be sold before the new year, it would be even harder to sell after the new year. Lin Yuan immediately stated his purpose for coming here. "Brother Feng, I want to buy some dimensional lifeform's flesh." Upon hearing that, the boorish Big Brother Feng's expression obviously improved. He asked, "What kind of dimensional lifeform's flesh do you want, and what grade?" "It's the end of the year, I'll sell it to you at a reduced price. I'll give you a 30% discount on the flesh of insect dimensional creatures. I'll give you a 50% discount on the flesh of swamp dimensional creatures. I'll give you a 40% discount on the flesh of underground dimensional creatures. I'll give you a 30% discount on the flesh of abyss dimensional creatures. How's the price?" Lin Yuan didn't expect Big Brother Feng to give him such a low price. However, Lin Yuan didn't wish to buy the flesh of these dimensional lifeforms. "Brother Feng, I want the flesh and blood of the water world dimensional lifeforms." Lin Yuan had just finished speaking when he suddenly felt the boorish Big Brother Feng's expression turn stern. "Kid, you're messing with me, right?" Lin Yuan did not understand why this boorish man, Big Brother Feng, would say such a thing. Lin Yuan could not help but mutter in his heart. "Play you? How should I play you? What's so fun about you? I'm only here to buy dimensional creature flesh. Stay up all night long, sob sob sob, please order all of them, reward me, my recent grades have dropped by half. Sob sob sob, buttons are so pitiful." End of chapter. Chapter 376. The boorish Big Brother Feng was already worried about the upcoming active period of the dimensional rift. When he thought of how he still had a large amount of dimensional creature flesh that he hadn't sold, the boorish Brother Feng couldn't even eat. When Lin Yuan said that he wanted to buy dimensional lifeforms' flesh, Big Brother Feng was very happy. The boorish Big Brother Feng even gave Lin Yuan a discount on the dimensional lifeforms' flesh and sold them at the base price. It could even be said that the flesh and blood of insect dimensional creatures were at a 30% discount. Brother Feng was selling them at a loss. However, Brother Feng didn't expect this. Lin Yuan actually wanted the water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh. Was this something that people would buy? Or rather, how could anyone want to buy the flesh of a water world dimensional creature? When the boorish Big Brother Feng saw that Lin Yuan was confused, his aggrieved expression didn't seem to be fake. He said patiently, "Have you seen the flesh and blood of water world dimensional creatures?" Lin Yuan was still wondering why Big Brother Feng had asked him to play with him. Upon hearing Big Brother Feng's question, Lin Yuan immediately answered, "Of course I've seen the flesh and blood of water world dimensional creatures." When Big Brother Feng heard Lin Yuan's words, he immediately replied in a bad mood. "You've seen the flesh of water world dimensional creatures, so you should know the taste of their flesh. Can that kind of thing be taken out and sold? Do you want me to kill everyone with my stench?" Lin Yuan touched the back of his head. He recalled that the flesh of the water world dimensional lifeforms was in the diamond phase storage box. He had never taken out the flesh of the water world dimensional lifeforms to check. The water world dimensional creatures were not small in size. In particular, most of the platinum water world lifeforms in the diamond phase storage box were more than 8 meters long. The largest platinum water world dimensional creature was more than 25 meters long. It was inconvenient for him to take out such a big thing. However, as for the smell that Brother Feng mentioned, the flesh and blood of dimensional creatures did not smell good. The flesh and blood of the alien insect dimensional lifeforms carried a strong sour smell. The flesh and blood of the abyss dimensional creatures carried a strong smell of sulfur. However, even if the flesh and blood of a water world dimensional creature smells bad, it shouldn't be enough to kill the people around him, right? After listening to Big Brother Feng's words, Lin Yuan knew that it would be impossible for him to buy the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh on Star Web. The flesh of dimensional creatures was useless to begin with, so there had always been very few channels to sell it. For someone like Brother Feng, who had a channel to import dimensional lifeforms' flesh and blood, it could be said that he knew very well if there was any stock of water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh and blood. Brother Feng's current reaction meant that there was no sale of the flesh and blood of water world dimensional creatures in his entire channel. It seemed that it would be difficult for him to find a place that would sell water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh. However, he did not understand why anyone would be willing to buy the water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh, so he asked, Big Brother Feng, why would anyone be willing to buy the water world dimensional lifeforms' flesh? Brother Feng, why doesn't anyone buy the flesh of the water world dimensional creatures? When Big Brother Feng heard Lin Yuan's question, he recalled that Lin Yuan had bought dimensional lifeforms' flesh from him before, so he wrinkled his nose and said, yes. The first point is that the flesh and blood of the water world dimensional lifeforms are highly toxic. Although the bodies of the water world dimensional lifeforms contain nutrients that are beneficial to water type phase, the water world dimensional lifeforms aren't as powerful as water phase. However, the poison contained in the water world dimensional lifeforms will cause a large amount of stinky mucus to appear on the surface of spirit objects that consume the flesh and blood of water dimensional lifeforms. Then, the surface of the Fae wrapped in mucus will constantly fester. That's why only a fool would want to buy the flesh of a water world dimensional creature. Of course, this is only the first point. The second point is that if the flesh of the water world dimensional lifeforms is not immediately placed in the Fae storage box, it will be destroyed. After leaving the seawater and being exposed to the air for a few minutes, it will immediately rot. After decaying, the water world dimensional creature will immediately change from an unbearable stench to a rotten stench. I don't think anyone can endure that smell. As he spoke, Brother Feng wrinkled his nose with lingering fear. He expressed that he didn't want to recall that stench anymore. At this moment, Brother Feng suddenly had some doubts. Why did the cheerful youth in front of him want to buy the flesh of a water world dimensional creature for no reason? Kid, what's the use of buying the water world dimensional creature's flesh? I have plenty of water-type Fae flesh here. If you need it, I can give you a 10% discount. The boorish Big Brother Feng had a very good impression of Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's body emitted a faint aura of natural sunlight. It was easy for people to have a good impression of him after interacting with him. Lin Yuan replied awkwardly after hearing Big Brother Feng's words. I'm buying the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh to feed Faes. After listening to Big Brother Feng's explanation, Lin Yuan could not help but marvel at Red Thorn's mouth of relinquished powerful digestive function. Red Thorn could easily digest the poisonous substances that other Faes couldn't. Not only that, but it could also give him a beneficial mutation. However, after saying that, Lin Yuan saw Big Brother Feng's face turn red, and it was obvious that he was about to go berserk. Lin Yuan said hurriedly, Brother Feng, do you have any gold-fringed fringe fish? I would like to buy some. Lin Yuan was really afraid that he would infuriate Big Brother Feng to the point of developing cerebral thrombosis, high blood pressure, gastric ulcers, diabetes, liver cirrhosis, and myocardial infarction. No matter what, Zhou Jiesin was the one who introduced Brother Feng to her. It would be awkward if Zhou Jiesin found out that she was so angry that she had complications. It just so happened that Endless Summer and the mother of Bloodbath had recently taken a liking to gold ingredient, the golden-edged fringed fish. Therefore, Lin Yuan thought of buying some from Big Brother Feng. Brother Feng was so angry that he wanted to curse. Previously, when Big Brother Feng saw Lin Yuan's innocent expression, he felt that he might have wronged Lin Yuan. But now, he actually heard that Lin Yuan wanted to buy the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh to feed his fae. Brother Feng was sure that the young man in front of him, whom he had a good impression of, was playing with him. Moreover, he wanted to play with her ruthlessly. How could a sane person think of buying water world dimensional lifeform's flesh to feed fays? Wouldn't it be better to just feed it to him? However, before Big Brother Feng could get angry, he heard that Lin Yuan wanted to buy the gold ingredient, the golden-edged fringed fish. Big Brother Feng's eyes lit up. Big Brother Feng might be selling fays' flesh and dimensional lifeforms' flesh here, but he wasn't selling them at all. There weren't many gold fays' flesh that could be sold in a day. Furthermore, the gold ingredient, the golden-edged fringed fish, weighed less than 500 grams and was considered an expensive ingredient. If he could sell a few, he would definitely be able to make a small profit. Big Brother Feng had planned to close the stall at this time, but he didn't expect to receive a big order before closing the stall. First update, end of this chapter. Chapter 377. Big Brother Feng said forthrightly to Lin Yuan. Come, follow me to the storeroom to take a look. I happen to have a few golden-edged skirt fish here. These are all prepared for those big restaurants. If you like any of them, you can pick them first. Speaking up to this point, Brother Feng suddenly gritted his teeth. Kid, have you heard of the Radiance 100 Sequences Zhao Xiaochun who has the title of anorexia? Lin Yuan felt that Big Brother Feng's thoughts were too jumpy. Why did the topic suddenly jump to Zhao Xiaochun? Lin Yuan wasn't very familiar with Zhao Xiaochun. However, Lin Yuan had indeed met Zhao Xiaochun with both of his identities, so he asked, why? Brother Feng, do you like Zhao Xiaochun? When Brother Feng thought of Zhao Xiaochun, he gritted his teeth in hatred. Now that Lin Yuan had asked if she liked Zhao Xiaochun, she felt a little embarrassed. He lost control of his emotions and slapped his thighs with his hands. What the hell is Zhao Xiaochun's stomach made of? She can eat so much. My high-grade ingredients are mainly sold in the capital, but most of the restaurants in the capital have been eaten up by Zhao Xiaochun. I really don't know why this bottomless pit of gluttony is called anorexia. It's obvious that the previous critical needle girl is more realistic. I've watched Zhao Xiaochun's matches several times. I really can't see how such a skinny little girl could bankrupt so many restaurants. At the mention of Zhao Xiaochun, the boorish man, Brother Feng, became a chatterbox. Lin Yuan did not know how to comfort Big Brother Feng. It was just like how Lin Yuan did not know how to comfort Shi Su when he was in the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift. Compared to Brother Feng, Shi Su was obviously in a worse state. After thinking for a while, Lin Yuan said, that's right. Zhao Xiaochun's nickname is anorexia. Maybe anorexia means to eliminate all food, so there's no food. Lin Yuan's words made Big Brother Feng choke. Before he could even breathe, Brother Feng was choked to the point of burping. Brother Feng told himself in his heart. If I don't get angry when others get angry, no one will be able to replace me when I get angry until I get sick. After all, he still had a store to run. Brother Feng thought to himself that he must quickly sell the golden-edged fringed fish to this kid. Then, he would make this kid scram immediately. Why does this brat's word sound even more infuriating than Zhao Xiaochun's? Lin Yuan followed Big Brother Feng to the storeroom where the rare ingredients were stored. Lin Yuan realized that Big Brother Feng really had a lot of good stuff. Although there weren't any precious platinum ingredients, there were quite a few gold ingredients. When Lin Yuan saw that these gold ingredients were of good quality, he made up his mind to buy more. The manor had Endless Summer and the mother of Bloodbath, the two big eaters. Every day, Lu Jia went out to buy a lot of groceries. Why not buy a lot from Brother Feng and store them in the kitchen? In any case, the white jade snow orchid was placed on the kitchen cabinet, and the ingredients could be stored as long as they wanted. There were even some ingredients that were placed in the kitchen with the bronze/epic white jade snow orchid, which made the ingredients fresher than when they were first bought. Therefore, Lin Yuan activated the buy mode from Big Brother Feng. As long as someone in the mansion liked to eat Big Brother Feng's gold ingredients, Lin Yuan would buy some of them. Lin Yuan let go of his buy. This made Big Brother Feng extremely happy. Brother Feng, who was overwhelmed with grief and joy, felt a little dizzy and painful in his head. Lin Yuan had bought a large batch of gold ingredients this time, almost catching up with the amount that his store could sell in more than a month. After picking, Lin Yuan settled the bill with Big Brother Feng. He didn't expect to spend 700,000 radiance dollars to buy this batch of gold ingredients. Lin Yuan felt that radiance dollars were becoming more and more worthless. Why were they like Federation dollars? After settling the bill, Lin Yuan said to Big Brother Feng, Brother Feng, if I need more ingredients in the future, I will come back to buy them from you. When Lin Yuan had bought that large batch of gold ingredients, the smile on Big Brother Feng's face had not withered. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the smile on her face became even more exaggerated. Brother Feng's face looked fierce. Now that he was overjoyed, he looked like an anglerfish baring its teeth. All right. Good. If you need anything, just call me. I promise to serve you well. It has always been a 10% discount. After Lin Yuan left, Big Brother Feng could not help but say, this kid is really nice. It's a pity that he's not a mute. Lin Yuan didn't know that Big Brother Feng had labeled him as a pity that he had a mouth. Lin Yuan hadn't completed his purpose of coming to Star Web. He didn't buy the Gold Water World Dimensional Lifeform's flesh at all. He even learned a piece of bad news, which was that the Water World Dimensional Lifeform's flesh could not be sold. After leaving Star Web, Lin Yuan looked at his phone. Although it was late at night, Lin Yuan found that Gao Feng had just updated his friend's circle after swiping his phone. Gao Feng, I'm in the wind. I'm in the waves. There are poems in the waves at night. I'm also a poem's little secret. Lin Yuan didn't expect Gao Feng to be a literary youth. This friend's circle was too pretentious. Since Lin Yuan knew that Gao Feng was not asleep, he simply called him. Gao Feng's Gao family had been developing marine resources recently, so he should know where to get the Gold Water World Dimensional Lifeform's flesh. The phone rang for less than 10 seconds before Gao Feng picked it up. Lin Yuan heard the obvious sound of waves on Gao Feng's phone. It was obvious that Gao Feng should be listening to the waves at the seaside. Lin Yuan had always thought that Gao Feng had posted this friend's circle because he was pretentious. He didn't expect Gao Feng to really be listening to the sea at the seaside. It was winter, and the wind in Misty Wind City was strong. Listening to the sea at the seaside was too thoughtful. Before Lin Yuan could speak, Gao Feng's pretentious and surprised voice came from the other end of the phone. Brother, are you calling me at this time because you miss me? Hee hee. Lin Yuan could hear the fatigue in Gao Feng's voice through the phone. Before Lin Yuan could speak, Gao Feng said, Brother, I'm at the seaside. Brother, I am by the sea. Listen to the sound of the sea. Then, Lin Yuan felt as though Gao Feng had rushed the phone's microphone into the sea. The sound of the waves was not clear to Lin Yuan. However, the sound of the sea breeze blew up the phone's microphone. Lin Yuan was a little confused. The world of this literary youth was simply too difficult to understand. However, Lin Yuan had already regarded Gao Feng as his friend. Hearing the fatigue in Gao Feng's voice, Lin Yuan didn't talk about his own matters first. Instead, he asked Gao Feng, what happened recently? You made yourself so tired. Second update seeking recommendation votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 378. Gao Feng had wanted to go to the seaside because he was in a bad mood. Otherwise, it would have been better to stay at home during the winter. Why would he come out to face the knife-like sea breeze in early winter? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Gao Feng's heart warmed. At the same time, he was a little surprised. His father had just told him not to go out and be crazy for too long before he left. However, he did not hear the exhaustion in his voice at all. But now, Lin Yuan could hear the exhaustion in his voice through the phone. Gao Feng knew that no matter how meticulous Lin Yuan was, he could hear the exhaustion in his voice. However, if Lin Yuan did not regard him as a friend, he would definitely not ask what he had encountered. Gao Feng sighed and said, "Brother, you don't know that those Class 5 spirit craftsmen are too difficult to invite. Brother, you don't know how difficult it is to invite those Class 5 spirit craftsmen. I'm afraid of wasting those 4 pieces of completely jade-textured supreme-grade green elm." After Gao Feng finished speaking, he thought that he would use the Gao family's connections to invite a Class 5 spirit craftsman. During this time, Gao Feng had been thinking about giving the old master a gift. Therefore, he had not used the Gao family's connections. Instead, he had been using the connections he had accumulated to plan this matter. However, Gao Feng now found that without the Gao family's connections, he could not invite a Class 5 spirit craftsman with his own strength. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard Gao Feng's words. Lin Yuan thought it was something else, but it turned out that it was because of the 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards. It had been a month since Lin Yuan had traded the completely jade-textured green elm boards with Gao Feng. It had been a month, but Gao Feng had not started to use these 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards to make objects. Hu Quan was now a Class 5 spirit craftsman and could definitely help Gao Feng, so Lin Yuan replied. Lin Yuan said, "If you can't find a Class 5 spirit craftsman to help, I have one here. If you need, send me the blueprints of the objects you want to make in the 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards." As soon as Gao Feng heard Lin Yuan's words, he immediately felt the annoyance in his heart disappear. Gao Feng suddenly realized that the sea breeze in early winter was too cold. He was just a weak, pure support. Why did he have to be trampled by the sea breeze here? At the same time, Lin Yuan's weight in Gao Feng's heart became even heavier. Even if Gao Feng's other friends could find Class 5 spirit craftsmen, they would never take the initiative to help. This was because no one was willing to owe a Class 5 spirit craftsman a favor for someone else. "Brother, thank you so much. I've already drawn the blueprint. I'll mail it to you when I get home." Hearing that Gao Feng was fine, Lin Yuan's voice sounded relaxed. He directly stated the purpose of his call. "Gao Feng, do you know where to get the flesh of a gold water world dimensional creature?" Gao Feng was immediately surprised and asked, "What's going on?" "Brother, why do you want that thing?" "That thing stinks and it's poisonous. No one would put it away. Some time ago, a Class 2 water world dimensional rift opened up in the coastal waters controlled by our Gao clan. The water world dimensional creatures that surged out from inside immediately turned into biochemical weapons after they were killed. It stinks." After the people who went to deal with the Class 2 water world dimensional rift came back, they didn't eat properly for a week. The flesh and blood of those water world dimensional creatures were thrown into the bottom of the sea after they were killed. When Lin Yuan heard Gao Feng's words, he had an idea. From the looks of it, it wasn't impossible to obtain the flesh of the water world dimensional life forms. After some time, it would be the active period for dimensional rifts. By then, not only would the dimensional rifts on land become unstable, but the chances of them opening up would also be higher. It was the same for the water world dimensional rift in the sea. The Gao family had been developing coastal resources and had already taken control of a lot of coastal waters. In that case, as long as Gao Feng waited for the dimensional rift to erupt, he would pay attention to the water world dimensional rift in the coastal waters. When the time came, he would definitely be able to obtain the flesh of a gold water world dimensional creature for Red Thorn to devour. It helped the petals of Red Thorn's 12 large flowers undergo a gill-like mutation. It allowed Red Thorn's ability to breathe underwater to become stronger. "Gao Feng, when the dimensional rift is active, can you help me get some gold water world dimensional life forms flesh?" When Gao Feng heard this, he immediately expressed that there was no problem. Gao Feng said after thinking for a while, "Brother, if I go now, I should be able to get the flesh of a bronze water world dimensional life form. Do you think it's useful?" When Lin Yuan heard Gao Feng's words, he pondered for a while. Red Thorn was now a silver/fantasy breed fae. Even if the flesh of a bronze water world dimensional life form was useful, the effect was really too weak. The mutation effect on Red Thorn could be said to be negligible. There was no need for Gao Feng to expend effort to find the flesh of a bronze water world dimensional life form. The flesh of a water world dimensional life form below gold is of no use to me. I need the flesh of a gold or platinum water world dimensional life form. In Lin Yuan's opinion, although the flesh of a platinum water world dimensional life form could not be eaten yet, there was no harm in storing more. After hanging up the phone, Lin Yuan was a little curious. Why did the boorish man, Big Brother Feng, and Gao Feng have such lingering fears about the flesh of a water world dimensional life form? Lin Yuan's curiosity was uncontrollable. Then, Lin Yuan came to the open space outside the main mansion and summoned the smallest platinum water world dimensional life form from the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box. This smallest platinum water world dimensional life form was more than 8 meters long. It looked like a strange fish. This strange fish's body was covered with a layer of anemone-like tentacles. The color of these tentacles looked very bright. However, after careful observation, one could see that these tentacles were hidden with pitch-black stingers, which were obviously highly toxic. Based on body structure alone, most of these water world dimensional life forms were tentacle-type dimensional life forms. Obviously, their combat ability should not be weak. As soon as Lin Yuan summoned the platinum water world dimensional life form with strange tentacles, he almost fainted from the smell. Since Lin Yuan was standing outside against the wind, he did not wait for this 8-meter-long strange tentacle fish to land on the ground. Lin Yuan smelled something he had never smelled in his life. A pungent fishy smell. Lin Yuan did not know how to describe this smell. It was like putting the internal organs of dozens of sea fish in a jar of sauce. It was covered with a layer of plastic and then exposed to the sun for 10 days. When the innards of the dozen or so fishes turned green, they were rolled into a pancake and eaten. That was probably how it tasted. Of course, Lin Yuan's description might not be accurate. Perhaps the smell of the green internal organs of the dozens of fish phase was not as pungent as the smell of this water world dimensional life form's flesh and blood. Lin Yuan hurriedly took advantage of the fact that the platinum water world dimensional life form had yet to land on the ground. Then, he stored this water world dimensional life form back into the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box again. He had heard from Big Brother Feng that this platinum water world dimensional life form would easily decay when exposed to air. He didn't want to smell the putrid stench of this platinum dimensional life form after it decayed. Even after he stored this platinum water world dimensional life form back into the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box, Lin Yuan's abdomen was still churning. Lin Yuan looked at the large pile of smelly mucus on this open space, and the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch wildly. Lin Yuan hurriedly returned to the mansion, took out the cleaning tools, and dealt with the platinum water world dimensional life form. Even though it did not fall to the ground, a lot of mucus still dripped from the surface of its body. When dealing with this mucus, if Lin Yuan did not have good endurance, he would have vomited it out. After spending 3 hours, Lin Yuan finally tidied up the courtyard in the early winter's cold wind. However, the stench would probably have to wait until tomorrow morning before it would dissipate completely. At that moment, the ostrich logistics courier arrived outside the mansion. The courier smelled the smell coming from the mansion and could not help but guess. Did the people in this manor just take a dump in the yard? Make up for yesterday's third update seeking recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 379. Under this ostrich logistics courier's strange gaze, Lin Yuan accepted the express delivery with some confusion. Then the ostrich logistics courier rode on his flying fei as if he was fleeing and quickly left within 500 meters of the return from faraway manor. Lin Yuan looked at the gold ingredients in the silver fei storage box he had bought from Big Brother Feng. He lowered his head and sniffed the smell on his clothes in disgust. Lin Yuan only felt his stomach churn again, and he hurriedly used Morbius' calm mind on himself. Only then did it prevent Lin Yuan from spitting out a parabola from his mouth. Since Lin Yuan had been standing against the wind in the open space outside the manor, His clothes were also stained with the fishy smell of the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. The fishy smell of the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh lasted much longer than those perfumes. If he did not wash it a few times, he would not be able to get rid of this fishy smell. Lin Yuan hurriedly took this silver face storage box's gold ingredients back into the manor and placed it on the completely jade-textured wood table. Then, he went upstairs to take a shower and change his clothes. After washing the stinky clothes he had just changed out of, he felt that he should really change his name to Lin Tossing. Lin Yuan felt that he should really change his name to Lin Tossing. He had jumped into the artificial lake once tonight, cleaned the courtyard for 3 hours, taken 2 showers, and changed his clothes twice. If this was not Lin Tossing, what would it be? With that thought, Lin Yuan suddenly paused. It seemed that he could not call himself Lin Tossing or Big Brother Bath. Lin Yuan's biological clock had been changed during this period. Every day, he would go to bed before 11 o'clock. Lin Yuan looked at the time and found that it was already past 1 o'clock in the morning. However, Lin Yuan was no longer sleepy because of the fishy smell of the water world dimensional lifeform's flesh. He simply went downstairs and took the gold ingredients in the silver phase storage box to the kitchen. They were placed in categories on the huge shelves in the kitchen that almost occupied one wall. After placing these gold ingredients, Lin Yuan carefully washed his hands before returning to his room. After returning to his room, he thought of the beeswax box that Mystic Moon had brought for his master, the Moon Empress. He summoned the small beeswax box from his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan leaned on the bed and opened the beeswax box. Lin Yuan sat up on the bed. There were 3 items in the small beeswax box. It was a hollowed-out pendant made of flowing cloud beeswax. The pendant looked very exquisite. This pendant was engraved with layers upon layers of osmanthus flower patterns. It seemed to be filled with a kind of pure osmanthus aura. Layers of osmanthus flowers seemed to grow in the shade of the tree. There was a small groove above the pendant. Lin Yuan looked at the size of the groove and casually flipped it over. He took out the extreme token that he had placed in the spirit lock spatial zone. This extreme token contained the Moon Empress Moonlight domain once. It was also the trump card that the Moon Empress had left for him in addition to the Path Protector, the Mother of Bloodbath. The Moonlight domain sealed by the extreme token could not only protect him but also allow him to launch a killing blow at a necessary moment. This extreme token could be embedded in the hollowed-out pendant made of flowing cloud beeswax. Lin Yuan looked at the groove where the extreme token was embedded in the flowing cloud beeswax pendant and found that it fit perfectly. A crescent moon pattern was revealed from the hollowed-out hole of the flowing cloud beeswax pendant. It made the osmanthus flower pattern on the pendant look like an osmanthus flower growing peacefully under the moonlight. There was a kind of osmanthus leaves the evening color, and the curtain shadows the faint autumn light. The decadent wind has yet to fall, and the night has yet to end. There was no struggle and silence, but it had invisibly become the most beautiful scenery under the moon. There was no need for light green and light red, it was naturally first-rate among flowers. Lin Yuan did not know why he suddenly thought of this poem. This poem could be considered as a form of encouragement. Lin Yuan looked at the flowing cloud beeswax pendant again and stood up. He found a black rope and threaded it through the hole of the flowing cloud beeswax pendant before hanging it around his neck. Then, he put the flowing cloud beeswax pendant on his neck into his close-fitting clothes. It was next to his chest. The flowing cloud beeswax pendant was made of a kind of spiritual material that could quickly conduct spiritual power and was very sensitive to spiritual power. After placing the extreme token in the pendant, Lin Yuan only needed to circulate the spiritual power in his body slightly. He injected his spiritual power into the flowing cloud beeswax pendant. Then, the extreme token in the pendant would immediately activate and release the moonlight domain sealed in the extreme token. He looked at the 3 star-shaped stamens on the osmanthus flower engraved on the extreme token. Lin Yuan immediately recognized that this was the silver stamen gold luster cassia. This pendant should have been carved by his master, the Moon Empress, for him. As for the other 2 things in the amber box, one of them was a light green liquid in a crystal bottle. Lin Yuan took the crystal bottle and saw a line of words engraved on the bottle's wall. Disciple, that source type item is a spatial source type item. This bottle of spirit liquid is spirit liquid with hollow crystal shellfish shell powder added. As for how to use the spirit liquid in this bottle and that source type item, just take it as master testing you. Looking at the words on the bottle, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that his master, the Moon Empress, wanted to give him something. She even wanted to find a reason for his independence. This made Lin Yuan feel very ashamed. For the first time, Lin Yuan felt that he was a little too independent. However, if he wanted to make a career, he could not rely on his master, the Moon Empress. He could rely on his master for a lifetime. As for the Moon Empress test, as long as a Class 2 creation master carefully studied it, they would definitely be able to see how to contract a source type item. Even if they could not see the effect of the source type item after contracting, they would definitely be able to see how to contract a source type item. At a glance, the light green spirit liquid in the bottle was related to the contract method of this source type item. As long as he knew how to contract a spatial source type item, he would naturally know how to use the light green spirit liquid. His master, the Moon Empress, had always known that he was a Class 2 creation master, so this was not considered a test at all. Lin Yuan opened the bottle stopper of the light green spirit liquid. The moment he opened the bottle stopper of the light green spirit liquid, a wave of pure spirit qi mixed with medicinal properties rushed toward his face. Today's first ticket, end of this chapter. Chapter 380. Lin Yuan found that the light green spirit liquid in this bottle contained an extremely high concentration of spirit qi. However, in comparison, it was still a little less pure and concentrated than the spirit qi in his spirit lock spatial zone. Although the concentration of spirit qi in this bottle of light green spirit liquid was not as concentrated as in his spirit lock spatial zone. However, the majestic medicinal properties contained in it were something that Lin Yuan could not produce no matter what. The majestic medicinal properties floated out of the bottle mouth. It made Lin Yuan feel as though the space in front of him was torn and distorted by the medicinal properties containing spatial energy in the bottle. This medicinal properties containing spatial energy should be the result of adding hollow crystal shellfish shell powder in this spirit liquid. Speaking of hollow crystal shellfish, it was a famous existence in the Radiance Federation. A fey like the hollow crystal shellfish was the reason why Ostrich Logistics could deliver goods within 3 hours no matter where they were. Ostrich Logistics claimed that it had cultivated the hollow crystal shellfish. It could be considered a core fey for Ostrich Logistics to settle down. At the same time, Ostrich Logistics had extremely strict control over the hollow crystal shellfish it had cultivated and would not allow them to flow outside of Ostrich Logistics. Lin Yuan had also thought about Ostrich Logistics' hollow crystal shellfish, but he had never had a way. This bottle of light green spirit liquid contained Ostrich Logistics' treasure, the hollow crystal shellfish shell powder. Given Ostrich Logistics' level of control over the hollow crystal shellfish, probably only experts at the level of his master, the Moon Empress. Only then could he get the hollow crystal shellfish shell from a semi-official faction like Ostrich Logistics. Then Lin Yuan looked at the third item in this beeswax box. This third item was the spatial source type that his master, the Moon Empress, had mentioned. There were hundreds of types of source type items announced in the Radiance Federation, but none of them were spatial source type. However, this did not mean that spatial source type items did not exist. On the contrary, as long as spatial source type items appeared, they would be fought over by the major factions. Spatial source type items had always been the rarest of all source type items. At the same time, there were many types of spatial source type items. Some were good at fighting, some were good at defense, and some had special functions. Some factions even compared one of the spatial source type items with the island whale. At one point, this specific spatial source type item was elevated to the level of a strategic treasure. This specific spatial source type item was raised to a strategic level treasure by the major factions. This was because the existence of such a specific spatial source type item was equivalent to obtaining the qualifications for spatial teleportation. The spatial source-type life form in front of him was precisely this kind of spatial source-type life form that could teleport. It could be said that spatial source-type items that could teleport were not as precious as the island whale. However, if one were to take it seriously, it wouldn't be any less useful than the island whale. If a force could obtain the ability to teleport, this meant that they could ignore the hindrance caused by distance. It was conceivable how important spatial source-type items were to the development of a faction. This kind of spatial source-type life form that could carry out spatial teleportation was something that he could not obtain with his current foundation. Lin Yuan had been able to exchange for a strategic-class treasure like the floating island whale with Gao Feng because the Gao family had spent a lot of resources but had not been able to hatch it. At the same time, due to the difference in the crystal eggshells of the floating island whale and the island whale, the Gao family regarded the unhatched floating island whale as a product of a failed mutation. Such a floating island whale was useless to the Gao family and would consume a lot of the family's resources instead. However, under such circumstances, Lin Yuan still took out 3 bronze/epic phase to exchange. Only then did he exchange for the floating island whale, which had been regarded as trash by the Gao family. One of the bronze/epic phase that Lin Yuan had exchanged for was the yellow spring lily, which was rare among bronze/epic phase. Only then did he exchange for the floating island whale, which was useless to the Gao family, from Gao Feng. It could be seen how much importance the major factions attached to the degree of control of strategic-class treasures. Lin Yuan knew that if his teacher, the Moon Empress, had not given him this spatial source-type item that could teleport. With Lin Yuan's current resources and foundation, even if he took out a bronze/legend fei to exchange for it, he would not be able to exchange for a spatial source-type item that could teleport. After all, no matter how precious a bronze/legend fei was, it could only allow a spirit chi professional to have a bronze/fantasy breed fei. However, a spatial source-type item that could teleport was a strategic-class treasure that could benefit a faction and allow it to develop rapidly. Even if Lin Yuan used many bronze/legend feis to exchange for it, how could Lin Yuan let this bronze/legend fei easily flow into the market? Lin Yuan had been using true data to check this source-type item. This source-type item was like a transparent glass ball, but if one calmed down and observed carefully, they would be able to see it. It was a transparent glass ball, and there seemed to be something transparent floating inside it. This source-type item was called the ethereal jellyfish. The way to contract with the ethereal jellyfish required the transparent outer shell to be broken. Then, it would be fed with a spirit fluid that was highly mixed with spatial energy and contained a high concentration of spirit chi within 1 minute. If it was not fed with a specific spirit fluid for more than 1 minute, the ethereal jellyfish would die. When the ethereal jellyfish was fed to normal I/normal, then, it would drip a large amount of the contractor's blood and let the blood stimulate the ethereal jellyfish. It would cause the ethereal jellyfish to be stimulated by the blood and spit out all 3 gastric sacs in its body. At that moment, it would inject a large amount of the contractor's blood into the ethereal jellyfish. It would use the blood to help the ethereal jellyfish grow 3 gastric sacs again. At that moment, the ethereal jellyfish's contract would be considered successful. Lin Yuan looked at the ethereal jellyfish's contract method displayed under true data and could not help but feel that this source-type lifeform's contract method was really strange. Lin Yuan used his hand to touch it, which was still in this glass-like sphere. The ethereal jellyfish, whose physical body could not be seen, muttered softly. "With this ethereal jellyfish, I can teleport. Then, the Sky City's white-clothed followers' plan can also start to be implemented." With that thought, a glint flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. From now on, Sky City would not only collect resources. It would also develop its military force. Yesterday's second update seeking recommendation votes tomorrow. I will try to finish updating the 4 chapters before 8 p.m. End of this chapter. Chapter 381. Just as Lin Yuan was preparing to contract this source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish, he picked up the bottle that contained the light green spirit fluid. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly realized the difficulty of contracting the ethereal jellyfish. It was the kind of spirit fluid that was highly mixed with spatial energy and contained a high concentration of spirit chi. In a sense, it was the privilege of Class 5 creation masters. Only Class 5 creation masters could mix the spirit chi concentration in the spirit fluid to such a degree. Even pinnacle Class 4 creation masters might be able to use the hollow crystal shellfish's powder to perfectly fuse with the spirit fluid and release the spatial energy in the hollow crystal shellfish. However, it was impossible to achieve the concentration of spirit chi in this bottle of light green spirit fluid. It also meant that this source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish, could only be contracted with the help of a Class 5 creation master. This source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish's contract method might not have a high requirement for the contractor, but it had a high requirement for soft power. First, one had to find a Class 5 creation master, and the Class 5 creation master had to be willing to help. In this era, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven to find a Class 4 creation master. It was imaginable that even if a faction obtained this strategic treasure and used it to rapidly develop their faction, they would only be able to watch anxiously. They would not be able to form a contract with this ethereal jellyfish and be anxious. Apart from that, this ethereal jellyfish had a very special point. After a successful contract, the ethereal jellyfish's evolution path was a little similar to the acid corrosion queen bee. After the ethereal jellyfish was contracted, it was unable to fuse with the contractor's comprehended willpower rune. The source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish, could only be evolved to Diamond X/Legend. It had to comprehend the willpower rune from heaven and earth to evolve into a fantasy breed. This made the ethereal jellyfish evolve into a fantasy breed no different from a wild fae. In fact, the ethereal jellyfish's situation wasn't bad for Lin Yuan. In fact, it was greatly beneficial. As Lin Yuan contracted more and more faes. Even with Lin Yuan's comprehension ability, the willpower runes he comprehended were far from the speed of contracting faes and source-type lifeforms. Genius, Blackie, and the flash purple butterfly still didn't have a suitable willpower rune. However, the ethereal jellyfish did not need to fuse with willpower runes. Instead, it needed to comprehend willpower runes from the heaven and earth itself. This would greatly reduce the pressure on him to use the willpower rune. It was very difficult for faes and source-type lifeforms to comprehend willpower runes on their own. However, as long as the fae or source-type lifeform could reach the legend quality as soon as possible, the legend quality would increase. The chances of a fae or source-type lifeform possessing a willpower rune would also be higher. As for the source-type ethereal jellyfish, he could rely on his own strength to let the ethereal jellyfish reach legend at bronze. This would undoubtedly increase the chances of the ethereal jellyfish comprehending the willpower rune. As long as the ethereal jellyfish reached diamond rank 10, everything would be fine. The ethereal jellyfish was a source-type life form that could teleport. After becoming a fantasy breed, the ethereal jellyfish obtained a new exclusive skill that would greatly enhance its teleportation ability. However, even if the ethereal jellyfish did not evolve into a fantasy breed, as long as its level was high enough, it could perform long-distance teleportation. That was enough for Lin Yuan. He took the glass-ball-shaped source-type ethereal jellyfish into the Spirit Lock spatial zone. When Lin Yuan entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he found that everything was quiet. Chimey had been sleeping on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Only 1/3 of the mid-grade strange flames sealed in the 130 leaves of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree had yet to be digested and absorbed. Lin Yuan sensed the state of Chimey's body. Chimey should not have to wait for the remaining 1/3 of the strange flames to be completely absorbed before waking up. At the same time, its quality would increase from Fantasy I to Fantasy II. As for the gray crane species Fae, Gray, it was now lying on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus and sleeping soundly. During this period of time, Gray had eaten a lot of tang fish and had plenty of nutrients. In addition, it was nourished by the massive and pure spirit chi in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, which was constantly repairing its genetic model. At that moment, Gray was visibly stronger than before. He was no longer as skinny as he was before. While Gray was becoming stronger, a lot of its gray feathers had also fallen off. At the bottom of the fallen gray feathers, a layer of fluff that was whiter than snow grew. This layer of snow-white fluff was very soft and dense. Lin Yuan believed that it would not take long for snow-white feathers to grow out of this layer of snow-white fluff. It could be seen from the bottom layer of fluff that was whiter than snow. Gray should be a crane species fae with white feathers. The Spirit Lock Spatial Zone's butler, the wind speed rapid antelope, was also lying on the side of the pure land of bliss. It might be sleeping in an uncomfortable position, but it even shook its small head in a daze and nudged the white gravel on the pure land of bliss before turning over. This turn, the wind speed rapid antelope's buttocks, which Lin Yuan had shaved into a heart-shaped shape, were facing Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan touched his nose and felt the wind speed rapid antelope's teasing love with its buttocks. Then, Lin Yuan started to work on this source-type ethereal jellyfish on the workbench. Lin Yuan first separated a piece of black feather made of the day and night spirit silver from the source sand. Then, he used this black feather to repeatedly knock on the glass-like shell on the ethereal jellyfish's surface. After a few repetitive knocks, the glass-like shell cracked. He stretched out his hand and pressed hard on the crack. The glass shell of the ethereal jellyfish was smashed into pieces. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly realized something. It turned out that these were the transparent ones in the glass-like shell. What looks like a liquid is not water. It was the body of the ethereal jellyfish. It turned out that the beating thing was the heart of the ethereal jellyfish. He hurriedly poured the light green spirit liquid that contained rich spirit chi and majestic spatial energy on the ethereal jellyfish. Lin Yuan might have used spiritual ingredients to induce the elemental shellfish to mutate before, but he had never used them before. It allowed the elemental shellfish to transform into elemental shellfish of different attributes according to the spirit materials of different attributes. However, in order to induce the mutation of the elemental shellfish, one only needed to use the aura of the spirit material itself to touch the pearl in the depths of the elemental shellfish multiple times. However, the spatial energy required by the ethereal jellyfish was completely mixed with the spirit liquid. This allowed the majestic spatial energy and pure spiritual energy to merge into one, perfectly blending with each other in the spirit liquid. If Lin Yuan had to take out such a huge amount of pure spirit chi, he could do it. However, it was impossible for him to fuse such a huge amount of spirit chi and majestic spatial energy. Making up for yesterday's third chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 382. Lin Yuan was very careful. He only dripped one drop of the light green spirit liquid on the ethereal jellyfish's body. Soon, Lin Yuan realized that the light green spirit liquid would vanish the moment it landed on the ethereal jellyfish's body. It was obvious that the ethereal jellyfish had absorbed the light green spirit liquid. However, there were no changes to the ethereal jellyfish after absorbing the light green spirit liquid. Lin Yuan continued to pour one drop of the light green spirit liquid at a time and repeated the process many times. When he poured 30 drops of the light green spirit liquid, Lin Yuan realized that there were 3 places in the ethereal jellyfish's body that had no color at all. 3 places in the ethereal jellyfish's body had become indistinct light green. The ethereal jellyfish's body was still in a transparent state. One could only see the ethereal jellyfish's indistinct beating heart in the air. Finally, Lin Yuan poured half a bottle of the light green spirit liquid into the ethereal jellyfish. The ethereal jellyfish still had no intention of spitting out the gastric pouches. However, the 3 light green spots in the ethereal jellyfish's body had become much bigger. It seemed like these 3 light green spots were the ethereal jellyfish's gastric pouches. Finally, when Lin Yuan poured out all the light green spirit liquid in the bottle, the ethereal jellyfish suddenly moved violently. The 3 constantly growing light green gastric pouches seemed to be stimulating the ethereal jellyfish's body. The ethereal jellyfish struggled to squirm its body and quickly spat out the 3 light green gastric pouches. After spitting out the 3 light green gastric pouches, the ethereal jellyfish seemed to have become weak and floated in the air. The heart that was faintly discernible in the air was beating at a much slower rate. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan ignored the 3 light green gastric pouches that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out. Instead, he took the black feather that was formed from the day and night spirit silver from the source sand that he had used before. Lin Yuan took the black feather and ruthlessly cut his palm. The moment Lin Yuan's palm was cut by the black feather, warm blood flowed through his palm and dripped onto the ethereal jellyfish's body. Immediately after, the ethereal jellyfish, which was originally in the air, absorbed Lin Yuan's blood into its body. Perhaps due to the loss of its stomach, the ethereal jellyfish's body was dyed red after absorbing Lin Yuan's blood. At this moment, the ethereal jellyfish was in mid-air, and its entire body had turned light red. Only now did Lin Yuan see the ethereal jellyfish's full appearance. At this moment, the normal level 1 normal ethereal jellyfish looked no different from the most common jellyfish in the sea. Its membrane-like body was wriggling slowly, and there were 20 to 30 tentacles that the jellyfish used to filter its food. He gently used his hand to touch these filtering tentacles and found that they were very soft to the touch. The exhausted ethereal jellyfish seemed to have regained its vitality with the injection of Lin Yuan's blood. His body, which looked like a thin film, suddenly became illusory, but then it became real again. The ethereal jellyfish wriggled in midair, looking as if it was shuttling back and forth in space. Every time it changed between reality and illusion, it would cause bursts of spatial energy fluctuations. As more and more of his blood was absorbed by the ethereal jellyfish, Lin Yuan noticed that most of the blood that dripped into the ethereal jellyfish's body was concentrated at its heart. The ethereal jellyfish's heart had become the darkest and reddest part of the ethereal jellyfish. However, Lin Yuan had already donated blood for 5 minutes. However, he realized that even after he had donated blood for 5 minutes, the ethereal jellyfish still did not seem to be full. The ethereal jellyfish was still greedily absorbing the blood that gushed out of his palm. Until now, the ethereal jellyfish's 3 stomach sacs had yet to regenerate. The speed at which blood flowed out of Lin Yuan's palm had become much slower. Due to the large amount of blood loss, Lin Yuan's arm had become numb. Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and used the day and night spirit silver feather to cut his other palm. This time, a large amount of blood dripped into the ethereal jellyfish's body. The moment the new blood dripped into the ethereal jellyfish's body, Lin Yuan realized that he could already connect with it. In the spiritual spatial zone, he could already establish a connection with the ethereal jellyfish. At the same time, the 3 stomach sacs that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out grew out again. However, the ethereal jellyfish's 3 stomach sacs were still pale red in color. As it floated in the air, it emitted a pale red radiance. It was just like a big lantern and looked very festive. However, Lin Yuan was a little speechless. If he had known this would happen, he would not have cut open his other palm as well. The blood from that hand was more than enough. Lin Yuan felt that he was really a heartless man to actually give himself an extra cut. At that moment, the jasmine lily on Lin Yuan's workbench rose into a ball of green light and landed on Lin Yuan's body. Lin Yuan's palm was visibly restored to its original state. Lin Yuan blinked his eyes. It seemed like not all the fays in the spirit lock spatial zone were asleep. At least, the jasmine lily was still awake. However, even if the jasmine lily was awake, Lin Yuan would not be able to see it. Or rather, as a plant species fae, the jasmine lily did not sleep at all. After experiencing the weakness of excessive blood loss, Lin Yuan could completely feel how difficult it was for Zhang Xiaobai to raise a leech. Lin Yuan felt that he should also soak wolfberries in a thermos flask in the future and start a healthy life. Fortunately, the jasmine lily's ability, heal, could recover the lost vitality. It allowed Lin Yuan to replenish the lost blood in a short period of time. Therefore, Lin Yuan only experienced the feeling of anemia for a few minutes before returning to normal. The ethereal jellyfish had become Lin Yuan's contracted fae. Lin Yuan tried to communicate with the ethereal jellyfish, but he realized that its mind was in a state of chaos. It did not even have a very basic consciousness, and it was impossible to communicate. According to the ethereal jellyfish's unclear consciousness, Lin Yuan's thought was that he was the ethereal jellyfish's contractor, and all the ethereal jellyfish liked to float around him. It was because the ethereal jellyfish's chaotic feeling made it very safe to float around him. Lin Yuan could not help but hold his forehead. It seemed like this ethereal jellyfish had the lowest intelligence among all of his fays. After forming the contract with the ethereal jellyfish, Lin Yuan did not leave the spirit lock spatial zone. Instead, he started to enhance the ethereal jellyfish. He continued to enhance the ethereal jellyfish to elite/epic. Lin Yuan planned to choose the most useful exclusive skill among the 3 exclusive skills that would appear when the ethereal jellyfish reached bronze. Today's first chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 383. Just as he was planning to enhance the ethereal jellyfish to bronze, the ethereal jellyfish suddenly appeared. Lin Yuan suddenly realized that the 3 light green gastric pouches that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out earlier had turned into light green crystals. These 3 light green crystals contained boundless spatial energy. Although Lin Yuan did not know what use the ethereal jellyfish's gastric pouches had turned into light green crystals, just by looking at the boundless spatial energy within them, they should be considered supreme-grade spatial spiritual ingredients. However, just by looking at the boundless spatial energy within these light green crystals, it was clear that these light green crystals formed from the 3 gastric sacs were extremely high-quality spatial attribute spirit materials. He placed the 3 ethereal jellyfish's gastric pouches into the brocade box. Then, he carefully stored the brocade box into his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan carefully stored the brocade box into his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Then, he let the light red ethereal jellyfish land on his palm. The ethereal jellyfish's 2 tentacles rested on both sides of Lin Yuan's palm. It was like Little Red Riding Hood with a red wig. With that thought in mind, Lin Yuan felt that his idea was a little dangerous. He released pure spirit qi into the ethereal jellyfish's body. Soon, the ethereal jellyfish broke through the barrier of Elite X/Epic. It became a Bronze I/Normal Source-type life form. At that moment, 3 exclusive skills appeared on the ethereal jellyfish. Lin Yuan did not immediately observe the 3 new exclusive skills and choose one of them. Instead, he took a closer look at the Bronze I ethereal jellyfish's abilities. Fey name, ethereal jellyfish, Fey species, whiskered jellyfish/floating jellyfish, Fey grade, bronze, 1/10, Fey type, spatial, Fey quality, normal abilities frowny face tentacle node. By breaking off the tentacles, the broken tentacles will be treated as a spatial node. Node teleportation, by sensing the spatial node, teleport to a designated spatial node. Lin Yuan looked at the ethereal jellyfish's normal ability, tentacle node, and elite ability, node teleportation. Lin Yuan suddenly realized that this source-type ethereal jellyfish could already teleport when it was at bronze. Previously, when Lin Yuan and the Moon Empress were having a question-and-answer session, the Moon Empress had mentioned this. Under normal circumstances, it was a spatial source-type life form that could teleport. Usually, when there were 4 skills in the gold grade, there would be a teleportation system. But now, the ethereal jellyfish had become a teleportation system at the bronze stage. Even though the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation system was only the most basic one, the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation system still existed. However, every time the ethereal jellyfish evolved, the skills that appeared would enrich the ethereal jellyfish's system. However, he did not know how far the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation range was. As for the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation range, he still needed to experiment before he could accurately know. However, it was clear that this was not the best time to experiment with the ethereal jellyfish's tentacle nodes and node teleportation. After looking at the ethereal jellyfish's abilities, he had a rough understanding of its teleportation mechanism. The ethereal jellyfish used its tentacles as space nodes and fused the broken tentacles into space as a spatial marker. Then, the ethereal jellyfish would find the spatial mark and teleport. After understanding the space jellyfish's 2 current skills, Lin Yuan started to look at the 3 exclusive skills. Among the ethereal jellyfish's 3 exclusive skills, the first was excess teleportation. Excess teleportation, increase the number of targets that can be teleported within a certain range at the spatial node. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up when he saw this exclusive skill. As the ethereal jellyfish's contractor, Lin Yuan knew that it could not only teleport one target at a time. As the ethereal jellyfish's grade increased, the number of teleportation targets would also keep increasing. However, the number of teleportation targets that the ethereal jellyfish could teleport was still limited. For example, given the ethereal jellyfish's current bronze eye strength, it was already very difficult for it to teleport Lin Yuan alone. It could not teleport another person at all. The excessive teleportation directly turned the limited teleportation number of the ethereal jellyfish into a true mass teleportation. It could allow the ethereal jellyfish to teleport multiple targets at once. This exclusive skill, excess teleportation, increased the ethereal jellyfish's spatial teleportation functionality. This made Lin Yuan very surprised. With this exclusive skill, even if he did not have the other two exclusive skills to choose from, he could still use it. Lin Yuan felt that he could accept it gladly. However, he still checked the other two exclusive skills. When he saw the second exclusive skill, Lin Yuan first nodded and then shook his head. Firm node, strengthen the spatial node's strength and extend the spatial node's teleportation distance. The second exclusive skill, firm node, could extend the teleportation distance and allow the ethereal jellyfish to teleport targets further. However, the ethereal jellyfish could not teleport too many things at once. No matter how far it could teleport, it could not compare to the first exclusive skill, excess teleportation. The effect of adding multiple teleportation targets was better. However, when Lin Yuan saw the third exclusive skill, he slapped his thigh. Lin Yuan slapped his thigh and chose the third exclusive skill without hesitation. Space tunnel. Fix the formation of a special long-distance spatial tunnel by breaking off a large number of tentacles and fusing them into space. When there are 3 long-distance spatial tunnels, each time one is cancelled, a new one can only be set up. The third exclusive skill, space tunnel, allowed Lin Yuan to set up 3 spatial tunnels. It was the same as setting up a spatial tunnel that could always exist within a certain distance. Although choosing these 3 spatial tunnels sacrificed the ethereal jellyfish's ability to teleport to multiple targets or ultra-long distance. However, the strategic significance of space tunnel was clearly higher than the exclusive skills, excess teleportation and firm node. If Lin Yuan's floating island whale rose into the sky in the future and built a sky city on its back, the ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, space tunnel, could directly connect Lin Yuan to a bridge from the ground to the sky city on the floating island whale's back. Previously, Lin Yuan had also thought that when the floating island whale floated into the sky, if he did not let it land, if his private faction members, including himself, wanted to get on the floating island whale's back with the help of a flying fae that could fly high into the sky. If that was the case, the floating island whale and the sky city on its back would be discovered by people with ulterior motives. They would find the floating island whale's existence when the flying fae flew toward it. However, with the ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, space tunnel, on the one hand, it could enhance the convenience of transportation between the floating island whale and the ground. On the other hand, it could also make the floating island whale hidden in the clouds, truly untouchable like a floating cloud. Yesterday's second night, end of this chapter. Chapter 384. It could be seen from this exclusive skill, space tunnel. To the major factions, spatial source-type items that could teleport were of great strategic significance. Or rather, it could be said that Lin Yuan's ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, space tunnel, was very important to his faction, Sky City. Lin Yuan looked at the bronze eye/normal ethereal jellyfish. He decided to go into seclusion for the next few days. He planned to upgrade the ethereal jellyfish to legend at bronze before upgrading it to silver. As for upgrading the ethereal jellyfish to gold, it would take too long. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry. There was less than a month before the new year. He could not keep going into seclusion to enhance the ethereal jellyfish before the new year. Therefore, he planned to wait until after the new year to upgrade the ethereal jellyfish to gold. Looking at the few little fellows that were still sleeping in the spirit lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan felt a little sleepy. He did not immediately enhance the ethereal jellyfish. Instead, he exited the spirit lock spatial zone. He had to have a good sleep before working hard. It would not be too late to upgrade the ethereal jellyfish's quality and grade after he received Gao Feng's express delivery and handed it to Hu Quan. Lin Yuan did not plan to use spirit chi crystals to enhance the ethereal jellyfish this time. This was because the spirit chi crystals had other uses for him. Lin Yuan once again used the flower brocade pearls to exchange for strange flames in his star web store. This was to let Chimy's quality be upgraded to Fantasy 3 before he took the Radiance 100 sequence test and complete its bloodline evolution. At that time, Lin Yuan could use the spirit chi crystals to upgrade Chimy's grade from Silver Eye to Gold Eye. He would let Chimy become a Gold Eye/Fantasy 3 Fae. At that time, Chimy, which had undergone a bloodline transformation, would be Lin Yuan's trump card to face all the challenges in the test. The next morning, Lin Yuan received the gold phase storage box that Gao Feng had mailed through Ostrich Logistics at the entrance of his mansion. After receiving the gold phase storage box, Lin Yuan called Gao Feng to inform him. The gold phase storage box contained the 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards and blueprints that Gao Feng had sent over. After all, the items that Gao Feng had mailed were truly valuable. Even if Lin Yuan didn't inform Gao Feng would keep thinking about it. He returned to the mansion with the gold phase storage box and saw Hu Quan wiping the carving knife in his hand. Lin Yuan walked up to Hu Quan and said, "You're right. Uncle Hu, here are 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards. Are you interested?" Hu Quan's eyes immediately lit up when he heard this. A completely jade-textured green elm? Of course I'm interested in such a good thing. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan handed the gold phase storage box in his hand to Hu Quan. "Thank you, Uncle Hu. This is for a friend of mine. I'll ask him to discuss the price with you later." Since Gao Feng could not find a Class 5 spirit craftsman, Lin Yuan happened to know and helped him. As for the price of using these 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards according to the blueprint, Gao Feng and Hu Quan would have to discuss it themselves. Although Hu Quan had signed a contract with him, he would not ask for any compensation for any items he made for the manor and his own forces. However, Lin Yuan would not really treat Hu Quan as a tool. He didn't even tell Hu Quan what his friend wanted to make before throwing it to Hu Quan, letting Hu Quan unknowingly become a coolie. This was tantamount to disrespecting Hu Quan. Hu Quan was a little unhappy when he heard that. "Why are you being so polite to me? Go talk to your friends. I eat well in this manner, and there are countless spiritual materials for me to use. I've long considered myself a part of this manor." As he said this, Hu Quan looked at the feature wall again. Hu Quan looked at himself next to Lin Yuan on the feature wall and said firmly to Lin Yuan, "Don't talk to me about remuneration next time. Giving me more completely jade-textured wood for my use is the best remuneration." At this point, Hu Quan smacked his lips and said, "Your friend is lucky. My fantasy breed wood weaving house centipede's first creation is going to be this object for your friend." At that moment, when you walked out of the kitchen and said to Hu Quan, "Uncle Hu, you really have to sleep at night in the future. Uncle Hu, you really have to sleep at night in the future. Otherwise, you won't be able to endure it for too long. After all, it's time for the liver to detoxify at night. If you work so hard, it will hurt your liver. Big Brother Lu cooked cinnamon pork liver soup for you again today. Uncle Hu, even if you don't want to drink it, you must drink it all this time." When Hu Quan heard Wen Yu's well-intentioned tone, the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch wildly. Hu Quan hated the smell of liver the most in his life. However, recently, Lu Jia had been cooking cinnamon pork liver soup for him. This made Hu Quan, who had never been taken care of, feel that he was being treated like a pregnant woman. However, it had to be said that even a boorish man like Hu Quan had been with everyone in the manor for a long time. Slowly, he began to treat this manor as a home that he had to protect. However, this cinnamon pork liver soup was really hard to come by. Hu Quan knew that the cinnamon pork liver soup helped the body detoxify. Even if he pinched his nose, he still could not drink the pork liver soup's taste. At that moment, Hu Quan really felt that he should change his work and rest schedule. Otherwise, even an immortal would not be able to stand drinking this cinnamon pork liver soup every day. Lin Yuan looked at Hu Quan's grinning expression and could not help but laugh. Perhaps the only thing that could defeat Hu Quan, a Class 5 spirit craftsman, and make him not stay up late was the cinnamon pork liver soup. While eating, Lin Yuan found that Endless Summer, who had always been dressed like a punk, had become normal overnight. How did he become normal in just one night? At that moment, Endless Summer's hair had returned to its original hair color, and it was tied into a simple ponytail. Endless Summer was also wearing a very simple pinkish-white small suit. It matched with the body weaponization bracelet on her wrist, which was full of pinkish-purple hydrangea flowers, and some simple and grand spirit accessories. It made Endless Summer's entire aura appear elegant and noble. It no longer gave people a rustic, non-mainstream, and heavy metal feeling like before. Lin Yuan looked at the Mother of Bloodbath. The Mother of Bloodbath nodded at Lin Yuan without leaving a trace, indicating that it had completed its mission. Lin Yuan gave the Mother of Bloodbath a thumbs up without leaving a trace. Lin Yuan did not expect the Mother of Bloodbath to complete its mission so well. But how did the Mother of Bloodbath complete its mission? Yesterday's third update. Go to the ticket, end of this chapter. Chapter 385. Could it be related to those fat otakus that the Mother of Bloodbath had been showing Endless Summer recently? During this time, Endless Summer had been eroded and influenced by the punk culture. It made Endless Summer's hair look like it had been struck by lightning. As soon as Lin Yuan saw Endless Summer, there were at least 5 colors on her hair. Moreover, Endless Summer's clothes were also very exaggerated. All kinds of strange clothes made Endless Summer look like a spirited little girl. The spirit accessories that Endless Summer had bought before were also put to use. Endless Summer hung almost all the spirit accessories that it had bought before on its body. This caused all kinds of spirit accessories to collide with each other no matter where Endless Summer went. Lin Yuan, Wen Yu, Lu Jia, and Hu Quan all tactfully mentioned the disadvantages of the punk style to Endless Summer. This allowed Endless Summer to appropriately slow down its style. However, be it Wen Yu, Lu Jia, or Hu Quan, even Lin Yuan had almost been influenced by Endless Summer's shameless metal culture. At one point, Lin Yuan thought that wearing 5 colors and all kinds of metal chains might look better. But in the end, rationality won over Endless Summer's introduction. What puzzled Lin Yuan was how the Mother of Bloodbath had completely changed Endless Summer's taste after one night, even though she had been dressed very exaggeratedly yesterday. This made Lin Yuan rather curious. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the Mother of Bloodbath say to Endless Summer, "Big Sister Summer, let me tell you. Big Sister Xia, let me tell you, those fat otakus like your previous style the most. If you still wear the same clothes as before, fat otakus will take photos of you on the street and post them on the Star Web forum. Then I don't know how many fat otakus will stick your photos on the wall. What do you think they will do to your photos at night?" Lin Yuan could clearly feel Endless Summer shiver. Immediately after, Lin Yuan realized that Endless Summer was looking at him, and she asked with some difficulty, "Oh really?" When Lin Yuan heard Endless Summer asking him, he wanted to explain to Endless Summer that fat otakus were actually huge and gentle animals. What the Mother of Bloodbath had said previously was not what fat otakus did. Fat otakus liked paper people, not punk photos. Fat otakus were almost as picky as emperors choosing concubines when looking for paper people. But then Lin Yuan saw the Mother of Bloodbath blinking hard at him. The meaning in the Mother of Bloodbath's eyes was obvious. It was obvious that he was saying that the task he had assigned to him had been completed. "If you screw this up again, you'll have to figure it out yourself. There's nothing I can do about it." Lin Yuan received the information from the Mother of Bloodbath's eyes and first looked at Endless Summer's normal attire. He recalled Endless Summer's unconventional attire. Lin Yuan hurriedly cleared his throat and said, "That's right. Endless summer, the mother of bloodbath is right. Your photo will turn yellow after a few days on the wall." Is fat otaku really that scary? After saying that, in order to deepen the horror of the fat otaku, he pondered for a moment and said, "That's right. Do you know what is called a death camp?" Lin Yuan's words stunned Endless Summer. In fact, not only Endless Summer, but even Lu Jia, Wen Yu, and Hu Quan were also stunned. They were all thinking about Lin Yuan's question. Only the mother of bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan with a scrutinizing gaze, as though it was the first time it truly knew him. Endless Summer said after thinking for a long time. "If it's a death camp, could it be the legendary Pond of Sin?" Lin Yuan shook his head. The fat otaku's bed sheet is called a death camp. Endless Summer was a little confused and did not understand what Lin Yuan meant. However, Wen Yu, Lu Jia, and Hu Quan understood what Lin Yuan meant. Immediately after, Lin Yuan saw that Endless Summer did not seem to understand the question he had asked before, so he quickly asked. "Endless Summer, do you know what can be called a life plunderer?" Endless Summer thought for a long time but could not think of a reason. With his suzerain/myth 3 strength, only creation-breed lifeforms should be able to take his life. Lin Yuan felt that Endless Summer should really make up for it did not even know such things. The fat otaku's hands can be called a life plunderer. Hu Quan was originally looking at the cinnamon pork liver soup in front of him with a difficult expression. However, when he heard Lin Yuan's words, he choked on the egg roll in his mouth and coughed violently. Endless Summer still did not seem to understand. However, the mother of bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan with a very dangerous gaze. Lin Yuan looked at the mother of bloodbath's eyes with a serious expression, just like when the mother of bloodbath winked at him. He winked at the mother of bloodbath. In his opinion, he was doing this for Endless Summer's sake. Otherwise, why would Lin Yuan go to a fat otaku who was such a gentle animal? The mother of bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan and suddenly smacked its lips. "How do you know so much? Cuff him up and take him away." Lin Yuan felt a little wronged. "How would you know what I'm talking about if you don't understand?" If they were to be taken away, the two of them would be handcuffed together. Hu Quan burst out laughing. However, before Hu Quan could laugh more, he heard Wen Yu say, "Uncle Hu, if you don't drink the cinnamon pork liver soup while it's hot, it'll get cold. Brother Lu cooked it for you for 1.5 hours this morning." Wen Yu cleverly changed the topic and shifted the topic from Lin Yuan to Hu Quan. Hu Quan looked at the looming chunks of pig liver and the big bowl of cinnamon branch pork liver soup in front of him and felt a bitter taste in his mouth. Upon seeing that Hu Quan was not very interested in the cinnamon pork liver soup, Lin Yuan said to Lu Jia, "Big brother Lu, I bought a lot of ingredients last night. If Uncle Hu doesn't like to drink pig liver soup, you can also drink beef liver soup or lamb liver soup." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan immediately picked up the bowl, pinched his nose, and drank the cinnamon pork liver soup in one gulp. Then, he quickly picked up the banana milk in his left hand and drank half a cup. He ate a few mouthfuls of fruit slices mixed with maple syrup before suppressing the taste of pig liver in his mouth. However, the more Hu Quan watched Lin Yuan eat breakfast slowly, the more he felt that Lin Yuan was actually a black-bellied kid. What was the difference between beef liver soup, lamb liver soup, and pig liver soup? Weren't they all liver? Moreover, wasn't the smell in this beef liver soup and lamb liver soup even worse? This kid must be taking revenge on me for not holding back my laughter when he was talking just now. After eating, Lin Yuan told everyone about his plan to enter seclusion for a period of time. Hu Quan rubbed his stomach and said, "I happen to not be going back to the mansion today and tomorrow. Those old guys in the Spirit Craftsman Association are going to hold a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman ceremony for me. When I come back, I'll be a real Class 5 Spirit Craftsman." Today's first update, end of this chapter. Chapter 386. Looking at Hu Quan's joyful expression after achieving his goal in life, Lin Yuan said to Hu Quan with a smile, "Then I'll congratulate Uncle Hu first. Hu Quan chuckled at first, then rolled his eyes at Lin Yuan and said in a bad mood, "Don't worry. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have become a Class 5 spirit craftsman." Lu Jie said as he tidied up the tableware on the table. "Uncle Hu, when are you coming back? Call us. When you come back, I'll cook a table of delicious food for you to celebrate." Hu Quan did not refuse, but said subconsciously, "I don't eat liver." Looking at Hu Quan's genuine expression, Lu Jie doubted his cooking skills for the first time. "I've also drunk a lot of the cinnamon pork liver soup I made. It's quite delicious." Why did Hu Quan hate drinking cinnamon pork liver soup so much? "Why don't I add some fish head and Sichuan sesame when I make cinnamon and pig liver soup for Hu Quan next time and make cinnamon and Sichuan sesame fish head and pig liver soup?" While Hu Quan was nourishing his liver, he could also replenish his spirit. With that in mind, Lu Jie felt that his idea was simply too awesome. It was like killing two birds with one stone. After sending Hu Quan out, Lin Yuan returned to his room. After returning to his room, he logged into the Star Web as a creation master. The first thing he did when he logged into Star Web was to go to his purchase with no loss store. The 10 flower brocade pearls that he had displayed earlier were once again traded under the guise of blind trading. Then, he started to check all the information he had received in the information bar during this period. Among these messages, most of them were asking if there were more flower brocade pearls that could be traded directly. Although these messages were sent in their own names, these people should have their own forces behind them. If a single person were to purchase so many flower brocade pearls, even a pinnacle class 4 creation master wouldn't be able to use them all. Lin Yuan had kept all this information. This was because Lin Yuan might make this deal in the future. Of course, there were also some messages asking if there were any bronze/epic phase here. Lin Yuan deleted all such information. Since Lin Yuan had already opened up a private faction territory on Star Web, he would not be able to do so. Furthermore, the main business direction he had set for his faction on Star Web was based on the different willpower runes comprehended by the Spirit Chi professionals. He was going to customize bronze/epic phase suitable for these Spirit Chi professionals with willpower runes. Thus, he naturally would not let his purchase with no loss store overlap with his private faction's business direction. Wouldn't that make him his own competitor? However, not being a competitor did not mean that he would not sell high-quality bronze phase through his purchase with no loss store in the future. Immediately after, he once again posted a trade message in his Star Web store. This message wasn't so much about exchanging items as it was about exchanging people. Lin Yuan wrote in his purchase with no loss store's exchange message. Recruiting king-class powerhouses with 3 or more willpower runes. If you give me your loyalty, I will give you a future. Lin Yuan directly released such a message with no intention of concealing his purpose. Lin Yuan did not write what kind of future he could give in this message. However, Lin Yuan believed that given the strength that his store had currently displayed, king-class experts who wanted to rely on a faction to obtain stable resources would definitely come into contact with him. However, Lin Yuan would not entertain ordinary king-class experts who came to contact with him. The king-class experts that Lin Yuan wanted to recruit needed to have at least 3 willpower runes. Lin Yuan's purpose of posting this message was not mainly to recruit those powerful king-class experts. Those powerful king-class experts were not easy to recruit. Those powerful king-class experts could completely pledge allegiance to top factions and obtain a massive amount of resources from top factions. What Lin Yuan really wanted to recruit were those king-class experts who had poor starting conditions and could only nurture one main fei after spending half a lifetime's resources. However, they had excellent talent and comprehended multiple willpower runes. Such king-class experts had always been limited by resources due to their poor starting point. Therefore, their main feis were often not very strong. They might have many willpower runes on the path of growth and could show their amazing talent. However, such king-class experts were still not favored by the veteran factions. This was because such king-class experts who did not have strong main feis could not immediately contribute to the veteran factions if they pledged allegiance to them. The veteran factions could only invest high-quality bronze feis in king-class experts with weak main feis. Only then would they be able to grow. The addition of such king-class experts was almost like constantly absorbing the veteran faction's resources. Moreover, it would take a long time for the phase to grow. The veteran factions were naturally unwilling to do such a loss-making business. It was very realistic in a world where strength was respected. Even if one had high talent, it could only be built up with high-quality bronze phase and massive resources. For the veteran factions, investing in king-class experts with powerful main phase was the best choice. Therefore, the king-class experts who only had one main phase and did not have strong main combat ability but many willpower runes were in a very awkward position. After all, there were too few creation masters in this world. High-quality bronze phase were really precious. Even those king-class experts with powerful main phase had joined the veteran factions for more than a decade. It was not certain that they would be able to obtain a high-quality bronze phase that was suitable for them to comprehend a willpower rune. The more unpopular king-class experts with weak main phase but many willpower runes were by the veteran factions, the better it was for Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan welcomed such king-class experts very much. High-quality bronze phase might be difficult for others, but it was just a matter of a few dozen minutes for Lin Yuan. It could be said that Lin Yuan was now doing a business without capital. He was using things that he could easily obtain to exchange for the loyalty of king-class experts with weak main phase but many willpower runes. Moreover, after pouring high-grade bronze phase into such king-class experts, Lin Yuan could raise them in a free-range state. No matter how weak these king-class experts' main phase were, they could still have some savings and take out the resources to nurture their new phase. Lin Yuan did not need to spend any effort in the future and saved a lot of trouble. This was actually Lin Yuan's white-clothed follower plan. Today's second night watch, tomorrow's third night watch, and tomorrow's first night watch. End of this chapter. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.